Chapter 128. Of course, before leaving, Chu Feng still wanted to excavate the pilgrimage grounds. To others, this place was shrouded in mystery and was hard to come by. But to him, the strange soil was enough. He had seen more than one strange ancient tree, and there was strange soil beneath it. To him, this was a priceless treasure. Chu Feng planned to plant the seed again and let it grow. He was somewhat surprised. He returned to the place where he had buried the seed and found that the leaves on the ancient tree had dimmed. They were no longer fresh and juicy. He had chosen this place before because the ancient tree was full of vitality and the strange soil beneath it was of high quality and in large quantities. What was the problem now? The tender shoots on the ancient tree were less translucent than before. Although they were still suffused with vitality, they were not as good as before. Chu Feng dug up the soil and observed carefully. The strange soil was still there, but it had lost its luster. It could maintain the vitality of the ancient tree, but it was difficult to make it flourish with green mist. He felt a little guilty. It was all because he had planted a seed that led to this result. However, the ancient trees here were all withered. As Mount Tai grew taller, the vitality here also became stronger, and some of them began to sprout. I hope that in a year and a half, with the vitality here, you will be able to flourish. Chu Feng felt somewhat guilty as he spoke to the ancient tree. He traversed through the mist, looking for the next suitable place. It would be extremely dangerous for an ordinary person to barge in recklessly. They might even be trapped here and die. Before coming here, Chu Feng had already made up his mind to break through to the king level. Now that he had succeeded, there were no obstacles along the way. The sun rose and the golden clouds descended. However, this area was still shrouded in mist. Chu Feng found another ancient tree. It had also sprouted and was full of vitality. The tender shoots were scarlet in color and as translucent as red coral. He buried the seed together with the stone box and sat down to wait. Unfortunately, half a day had passed, and the seed had not sprouted even by noon. At this time, Chu Feng was extremely hungry. He felt as if he could eat 2 cows at once. Whenever he thought of food, he could not help but feel his stomach growling. It could be said that Chu Feng had made a major breakthrough after becoming a king-level entity. His body had undergone an intense transformation, and his physique had improved by leaps and bounds. He needed high-energy food to replenish himself. When he thought of some delicacies, such as roast goose and roast lamb, he felt his stomach hurt. "I'm too hungry. I can't take it anymore." Chu Feng felt his face turning red. How could he be so useless today? Just thinking about some food made him almost drool. So hungry. In the end, he even felt that he could eat an elephant. Whoosh! Chu Feng left this place at an extremely fast speed. Earlier on, he had heard the cries of an eagle in the depths of the dense fog. It sounded like it was fighting with someone, and now he was searching for it. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to find them in the end. With his king-level divine instinct, even if the pilgrimage grounds were shrouded in dense fog, he could still see very far. The people who were engaged in an intense battle should have left by now. Chu Feng wandered around and confirmed that there were no living creatures in the depths of this area. In the end, he was so hungry that he couldn't take it anymore. His stomach rumbled like thunder, and he strongly needed high-energy food to replenish what he needed to transform. His body had changed too much today. Chu Feng was worried that something might happen to his body. He stealthily retraced his steps and returned to the outer area, which was considered safe by both humans and beast. Where did that quasi-king peacock go? Chu Feng asked a mutant. "It's over there. Don't go there no matter what. Stay away from it. That peacock is very ferocious. Even our quasi-king beast was defeated. He was no match for it." The young man was very honest. "Oh, okay. Thank you." Chu Feng nodded. If this mutant knew what the young man's motive was, he would probably think that he had met a madman. Because Chu Feng had gone to hunt a quasi-king peacock to fill his stomach, he was starving. Since he had already formed a grudge with the peacock race, and Kong Sheng and the rest were targeting him again and again, there was no need for him to be polite. He would hunt one first to solve his hunger problem. The smell of blood permeated the air in front of him, and there were mutant corpses on the ground. A peacock stood on top of the ruins. Its feathers were bright as if they were made of multicolored metal. Its eyes were cold, and it commanded many mutants to help it excavate the ruins while it remained motionless. Its true form was over 10 meters long, which wasn't too exaggerated. The strength of a beast was not related to its body size. It was already a quasi-king level expert and was valued by the Peacock King. If there were no accidents, it would be able to break through to the king level in the future. "You come here." The peacock spoke in human language. Its eyes were cold as it stared at Chu Feng, ordering him to come over. "What do you want?" Chu Feng smiled innocently. "You've got guts. You can still smile after seeing me," the peacock said coldly. After it defeated a human quasi-king beast, no one in this area dared to go against it. Nearby, there were many mutants and beasts excavating the ruins. They all turned to look at the peacock. "Do you all want to die? Keep digging!" The peacock shouted, its eyes shooting out a terrifying beam of light. Both humans and beasts were afraid. They hurriedly lowered their heads and squatted down to continue searching for valuable artifacts. "Did you kill those people on the ground?" Chu Feng saw at least 6 or 7 human corpses and 2 beast corpses nearby. The peacock revealed a look of disdain. "Ridiculous. You think you're qualified to question me? Scram to the ruins or you'll die immediately." "I'll choose you," Chu Feng said. He already had enmity with this race. Now that he found out that this peacock was killing innocents, there was no need for him to be polite. "Idiot, you're courting death." The peacock's voice was sinister. With a chi sound, it raised a large claw that was as bright as snow. Like an unsheathed sword, it grabbed at Chu Feng. If it was an ordinary mutant, they would definitely be crushed by this claw and die without a doubt. However, Chu Feng shot up with a swoosh, surpassing the speed of sound. This was not something a quasi-beast king could withstand. He leaped up high and landed a punch on the peacock's head. Chu Feng controlled himself and did not use too much force. Otherwise, the peacock's head would have been crushed. Even so, the pain was unbearable. It felt as if its skull was about to crack open. Its eyes rolled back and it collapsed to the ground. Chu Feng walked over and dragged the peacock into the depths of the mist. What happened? Nearby, many mutants and beasts raised their heads and stared at the back of the figure in astonishment. He was dragging a giant peacock into the distance and was about to disappear. "Master, where are you taking it?" A mutant mustered his courage and shouted from behind. He was too shocked. The tyrannical peacock king that had enslaved them was knocked down with a single punch, and it was dragged away. "I have some matters to discuss with it. You guys go ahead, I'll be leaving first." Chu Feng did not even look back as he disappeared into the depths of the mist. He was so hungry that he could not endure it any longer. When no one was paying attention to him, he dragged the peacock with him as he ran. He quickly found a spring and skinned the peacock, washed it, and finally brought it to the place where he buried the seed and began to roast it. During this time, he glanced at the seed and found that there was no change. This surprised him. Soon after, the aroma of meat wafted through the air. Chu Feng wolfed down the food like a whirlwind to satisfy his hunger. After a long time, Chu Feng was satisfied. He wiped the oil from the corner of his mouth and sighed. "Being able to eat my fill is also a kind of happiness." Chu Feng waited until evening and dug out the seed. He carefully observed it and confirmed that there was no change. This made him puzzled and puzzled. There was enough mutant soil here and the quality was also good. Why couldn't the seed germinate? Left with no choice, he moved to another place and found a verdant ancient tree. He buried the seed and the stone box in the soil and waited. At night, he continued to eat peacock meat. This was a quasi-king level vicious bird, and contained an astonishing amount of energy. The hunger Chu Feng felt after his transformation finally disappeared. After a night of rest, Chu Feng opened his eyes and dug up the mutant soil. There was still no change in the seed. He vaguely guessed that the mutant soil here was mainly green, red, and purple. It could be said that the soil under every ancient tree was the same. Could it be that the mutant soil required by the seed depends not only on the quantity but also the type? Once it has been absorbed, it will no longer be needed? He carefully searched and found that there was only this kind of three-colored soil here. Rumor has it that there is a five-colored altar on Mount Tai. Why haven't I found it? Chu Feng suspected that there was indeed five-colored soil here, but he couldn't find it. Finally, he left the mountain without further delay. Chu Feng had left, but Mount Tai was in an uproar. The disappearance of the peacock race's quasi-king caused a huge uproar. Finally, another quasi-king entered the depths of the mist and found the peacock. Oh God, that peacock was eaten by someone! What's going on? It's invincible below the king level. Who could have eaten it? This is too cruel. Yesterday, a young man with waist-length hair said he had business with the peacock. He knocked out the peacock king with one punch and dragged it away. This is too shocking. So it was to eat the peacock as food. So ferocious. After the news spread, all the beast race members were shocked and fled down Mount Tai like a swarm of bees. The humans, on the other hand, were dumbfounded. Chu Feng returned to his residence and washed up, revealing his slender and sturdy body that was flowing with a sparkling luster. He was astonished to find that not only had he grown long hair overnight, but he had also grown taller. He went to measure himself and found that he had grown from 179 centimeters to 185 centimeters. After becoming a king-level entity, my physique has undergone an intense transformation. My body has changed a lot. Chu Feng finally understood why he was so hungry before. Su Ming arrived. When he saw Chu Feng's long hair, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He said with a trembling voice, "Oh God, you didn't do this, did you?" "What did I do?" Chu Feng was puzzled. "Ancestor, did you eat a peacock on Mount Tai?" Su Ming felt that he couldn't even speak properly, and he was trembling a little. "How did you know?" Chu Feng was flabbergasted. "Oh God, it's really you!" Su Ming was seeing stars as he sat down on a chair. The outside world was abuzz with news of this incident. All the beast race members on Mount Tai had fled down the mountain, causing a huge commotion. Everyone was scared out of their wit. "Is something wrong?" Chu Feng asked. "Of course not. That was a subordinate of the Peacock King. You ate it just like that?" Su Ming felt a headache coming on. He guessed that a great battle was about to break out. Chu Feng replied indifferently, "Don't worry, it's not a beast king. It's not that important. The peacock bloodline won't care." "How is it not important?" Su Ming became anxious. "Although that peacock isn't a king-level entity, it's like the Peacock King's butler. It's in charge of all sorts of trivial matters. You actually ate it." He was speechless. What kind of monster had been sent over this time? Didn't he purposely run away to avoid being hunted down? Why would such a savage character need to run away? If others saw him, they would hide first. "I advise you to leave quickly. Don't stay here any longer," Su Ming said. "Sure, help me make the arrangements. I'll return to Shuntian immediately." Chu Feng happily nodded. Su Ming's efficiency was too high. After informing the relevant higher-ups, they arranged a plane for Chu Feng within a short period of time. It was as if they were sending off the god of plague. They rushed him the entire way to the airport. The plane whistled as it flew north. Chu Feng sat there quietly, reading through the messages on his communicator. He wanted to understand the changes that had taken place during the past few days. Chu Feng, if you don't show yourself soon, you'll have to wait to collect your parents' corpses. This was Huang Xiaoxian's message. He had threatened him last time, and this time, he was even more arrogant. Chu Feng's eyes immediately shot out two cold rays of light. This weasel was too insolent. He actually dared to speak to him in such a manner, threatening him again and again. Following that, he learned that Kong Sheng had gone around to various places and had come to Shuntian. Lu Tong also left him a message, telling him that the beast race was entrenched in this area. They wouldn't dare to attack openly, but if he were to return, those people would most likely go crazy. After all, last time, Chu Feng had killed Kong Lin and chopped up Huang Yun. Both of them were quasi-king level entities. One dead and the other injured shook the two races. Lu Tong guessed that there must be experts from the beast race who had come to behead Chu Feng and ensure that he would die without a doubt. Chu Feng thought for a while and contacted Lu Tong. He told him that he could send someone to snitch on him or inadvertently leak the news that he was about to return to Shuntian. Chu Feng was mainly worried that if he were to return openly and inform Huang Xiaoxian and the others, it would cause all sorts of misunderstandings. If those people were too cowardly and suspected that his cultivation had increased, they would turn around and flee. It would be troublesome to find them again. At first, Lu Tong firmly opposed this, believing that Chu Feng would be throwing his life away. The other party would definitely have more than one quasi-king level entity waiting for him to walk into their trap. "Don't worry, I'm confident." This was the only thing Chu Feng told him on the way back. Almost at the same time, Lu Tong received a secret report from Su Ming, informing him that Chu Feng had caused a huge commotion on Mount Tai, roasting a quasi-king level peacock and eating it. He was dumbfounded. Afterwards, Lu Tong immediately agreed to Chu Feng's request and began to ponder over the candidate. He immediately thought of Zhao Yu and his eyes lit up. "I'll give you a chance," Lu Tong said to himself. Not long after, he called Zhao Yu over and told him that Chu Feng would be returning tomorrow and that he would go and pick him up. At night, Huang Xiaoxian was extremely excited. He told Kong Sheng, "Brother Kong, that brat will be back soon. I think he'll be here tomorrow." "Good, I'll go hunting tomorrow." Kong Sheng stood up and walked to the French window. Gazing at the starry sky, a faint smile hung on his devilishly handsome face. Chapter 129. What a pity that I couldn't find the five-colored soil. I wonder when Mount Tai will truly recover and when all the ancient trees will be in full bloom. Chu Feng sat in the cabin, gazing at the night sky through the glass window. It was as if he was very close to the stars, each one sparkling like a diamond. He was indeed regretful. According to the ancient texts of the post-civilization era, Mount Tai was known as the origin of all living things. In the end, the seed in his hand had only sprouted once. After returning, Chu Feng did some research on the internet. Throughout the dynasties, when offering sacrifices to the heavens, five-colored soil was used to build altars and sacrifice the three animals. He guessed that the so-called five-colored soil should be mutant soil. It was a pity that he couldn't find any such rare soil. Whatever, the pilgrimage grounds can't be considered to have recovered yet. I'll pay it a visit when it truly begins. Chu Feng felt that the place wasn't simple at all. Mount Tai was getting bigger and bigger every day. It was so tall that it reached the clouds. Moreover, he could indeed smell a faint fragrance. It was definitely a flourishing ancient tree that was bearing fruit, but he just couldn't find it. It was very likely that there was a vast folded space at the top of the mountain. Not only were there astonishing sacred trees inside, but there were also other things. For example, the pure-blooded golden crow egg that the golden crow king had sensed before, the inheritance left behind by the ancient peacock sage, and many other precious items. I can already fight against beast kings now. When all the ancient trees on Mount Tai are filled with the fragrance of flowers, I'll definitely kill my way up there and wander about. Chu Feng smiled. That grand occasion had moved his heart. Following that, he began to rest and conserve his energy. He still had to fight the next day. He had never been careless. Even with his current strength, he was still able to maintain his calm and indifferent attitude. At dawn, Chu Feng woke up. At this time, the plane had already begun its descent and landed at the airport of Tianjin. If he had a choice, Chu Feng would rather not take a plane because it would be too passive in the air. There were many beasts in Shuntian. He was afraid that if he flew there directly, he would be ambushed midway, just like last time. In the end, he chose an armed helicopter and flew close to the mountainous terrain instead of flying at high altitude. He flew all the way north. Old man, it's time to leak the secret. I've set off from Tianjin and am heading north along the Qilu Mountains. I expect to arrive in Shuntian in the afternoon. When Lu Tong received the news, he immediately informed Zhao Yu to pick him up in the afternoon. Early in the morning, Huang Shaoxian received a message. He immediately laughed and said, "Chu Feng, oh Chu Feng, you are very cautious. Unfortunately, your whereabouts are already in our grasp. You can't escape from us." He laughed out loud. However, his laughter was so exaggerated that it affected his injuries. He immediately cursed endlessly. Now, he was covered in plaster and metal braces. Chu Feng had beaten him until all his bones were fractured. "Surnamed Chu, your mother is so ruthless. Just you wait, I'll skin you alive today," Huang Shaoxian swore while screaming in pain. Nostril, it has been confirmed that Chu Feng will take the route of the Qilu Mountain and fly back in a low-altitude armed helicopter. Huang Shaoxian immediately informed Kong Sheng. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't move freely, he would have participated in this hunt himself. It would be very interesting. "Alright, I understand. When the time comes, I'll use his head as a sacrifice to Uncle Lin," Kong Sheng said softly. There was not a single crease in his shirt. His face was extremely handsome, and his long hair was as glossy as satin. His entire person exuded a demonic aura. "Nostril, why don't we release some news as well?" Huang Shaoxian sat in his wheelchair, smiling sinisterly. "What do you want to do?" In the room, a skinny old man asked. His yellow hair was messy like weeds. His name was Huang Xian, a quasi-beast king of the yellow weasel lineage. Last time, Huang Yun's leg was broken and his tail was chopped off. The ancestor of the tribe was furious. Huang Xian was sent out to kill Chu Feng. He would not return until he dealt with the human who had humiliated his lineage. "Grandpa Huang Xian, when the time comes, you guys beat Chu Feng like a dead dog. Don't kill him immediately, take some pictures and send them to me." Huang Shaoxian laughed mischievously. The beast race kept pace with the times. After mastering some of the human culture, they not only used communicators, but also had their own social media platforms. His goal was obvious. He wanted to imitate Chu Feng's actions and post pictures and words on his social media platform. Last time, Chu Feng's actions could be said to be extremely destructive. The higher-ups of the Peacock tribe were shocked and enraged. Even the ancestor of Huang Xiaoxian's lineage was enraged. "Interesting." Huang Xian nodded. He felt that it was a good idea to give Chu Feng a taste of his own medicine. Kong Sheng smiled and did not object. On the sofa to his right were two old men called Kong Feng and Kong Chen. They were both experts of the Peacock tribe. They had come specifically to avenge Kong Lin, and had long vowed to kill Chu Feng with their own hands. This time, a total of 3 quasi-beast kings had to be dispatched. They were convinced that Chu Feng would not be able to escape. "Let's rest for a while, then we'll set off," Kong Sheng said. This time, he wanted to go as well. He wanted to witness the death of Chu Feng. "I want to help you warm up and attract people's attention," Huang Shaoxian laughed. Not long after, he logged into his social media platform and posted a few photos of the young experts of the beast race. These people had a certain level of fame in human society. For example, the grandson of the Silver Moon Wolf King, Bai Chuan. He had a head of shiny silver hair and was extremely handsome. He was extremely popular. There was also the descendant of the elder ape of the Great Woods Temple, Yuan Feng. His skin was bronze in color and he had short hair. He was able to lift a boulder weighing tens of thousands of kilograms with one hand. Who is this guy? Why did he post so many photos of the beast race? His name is Huang Shaoxian. It can't be, could it be that weasel? The first comment made Huang Shaoxian quite angry. It's really that weasel. He even verified it. His profile says that he's from Mount Pan. I've heard that Mount Pan is occupied by the weasel race's beast king. Heavens, what kind of world is this? Even weasels have their own social media platform. That bastard was beaten half to death by Chu Feng last time. All his bones were broken and he still has the face to show his face? Huang Shaoxian was furious. His original intention was to post some photos of the beast race's young experts to attract attention. He didn't expect to be ridiculed to such an extent. Indeed, his appearance soon spread like wildfire. Many people came to watch, but none of them had anything good to say. He was resentful and felt that he had made a blunder. He shouldn't have shown his face in public. He was cursed for no reason at all. This time, he felt wronged. He hadn't provoked anyone yet. Huang Shaoxian was furious. He then posted Kong Sheng's photo. Not only that, but there were also photos of Kong Sheng and the others being entertained by Jiang Luoshan when they went to Bodhi Biogenetics to discuss cooperation. He sneered inwardly. This was the human race's biggest corporation. How could they not be enthusiastic in front of the peerless peacock race? Sure enough, after these photos were released, it caused quite a stir. This was not new news. It had been reported 2 or 3 days ago that the peacock race and Bodhi Biogenetics were both eyeing Mount Putua. That was one of the 4 famous mountains of Buddhism. He's doing this on purpose. Everyone knows that this weasel was beaten to a pulp by Chu Feng. That's why he posted these photos to provoke Chu Feng, someone analyzed. This was because there were many rumors about the ambiguous relationship between Chu Feng and Jiang Luoshan. Huang Shaoxian's decision to post these photos at this time meant that he had ill intentions. Huang Shaoxian sneered. He didn't care about the scolding comment. He posted another photo of Lin. Moreover, he added some words. Brother Peacock admires Miss Lin. This time, it was even more deliberate and undisguised provocation. This was because it had long been rumored that Chu Feng and Linoy had a past and were still good friends. This weasel is too wicked. I'm sure he's up to no good. He deserves to be beaten until his bones are broken. A group of people cursed him. None of them had anything good to say. Someone forwarded Huang Shaoxian's post to Jiang Luoshan and Linoy, leaving a comment on their social media account. Jiang Luoshan replied quickly, "Guests are visiting. Of course, we have to receive them. I wonder what this weasel is trying to do." Many people forwarded the post to Huang Shaoxian, mocking him. "That weasel is talking about you. Did you hear that? What are you trying to do? Haha, the goddess is so straightforward. She's calling you by your pet name." Huang Shaoxian was furious. Soon, people found that Linoy's reply was even simpler. There were only a few words. Huang Shaoxian? I don't know him. This time, Huang Shaoxian was even more furious. This was contempt. He had mastered the human language, so he naturally knew the difference between him and the weasel. Ha ha ha. Below, a group of people laughed at him. Wait and see. I'll reveal it to you in a moment. I guarantee you'll laugh even harder. Huang Shaoxian was annoyed. He contacted Huang Xian and Kong Sheng directly, asking if they could do a live broadcast. If they thought it was too high profile, then they could wait until they beat up Chu Feng like a dead dog before doing a live broadcast. I can consider it. In the end, Kong Sheng nodded. He had always been calm, but now he made such a decision. This was because last time, when Kong Lin was killed, Chu Feng chopped off his head and took a photo with him. This had truly enraged the peacock race. They were provoked and felt humiliated. Kong Shring felt that there was a need to forcefully wash away the humiliation. Huang Xiaoxian's suggestion was not bad. Let's do a live broadcast. Huang Xiaoxian was overjoyed. He posted on the social media platform, I accidentally found out that a friend of mine went hunting. In a while, there might be an exciting video. I'll take some pictures of the game and show it to everyone. What was this weasel trying to do? Many people were taken aback, thinking that he was up to something. Could it be that he was targeting Chu Feng? Many people's hearts sank. They were very sensitive to this possibility. Because based on the personality of those beasts, how could they not seek revenge? Weasel, what are you trying to do? Some people left comments. Huang Xiaoxian's face was full of smiles as he quickly typed, nothing much, just hunting. I'm just drying some game in the sun. It might be a tom, dick, or a big crocodile. Just wait and see. I'm looking forward to it. This caused a commotion. Many people on the internet were alarmed. Something bad was about to happen. Ouyang Qing, Du Huaijin, and Yi Qingru were even more nervous. The first thought that came to their minds was that Chu Feng's whereabouts might have been discovered. Not long after, this became everyone's guess. Oh no, who can go and save Chu Feng? If the beasts dare to send out such a message, it means that they are very confident. There will definitely be a top expert who will go and kill Chu Feng. However, it was useless for people to be anxious. They had no idea where Chu Feng was, nor could they get in touch with him. Oh, it's starting. Everyone, please enjoy. Huang Xiaoxian was smiling. He was very flamboyant as he posted a link to a live broadcast platform on his social media platform. The next moment, many people swarmed in. Some were curious and some were nervous. The image came out. In the distance, an armed helicopter could be seen flying close to the forest. At this time, above the Qilu mountain ridge, Chu Feng was sitting peacefully in the helicopter. Soon, he noticed that there was a giant bird flying in front of him, blocking his way. At this time, his hair was short and had been trimmed. He was afraid that his appearance would cause the peacock tribe to be alarmed. All of this was for the sake of annihilating them. Land, Chu Feng said. He did not want to wait for the two quasi-king level peacocks to attack first and destroy the helicopter. The armed helicopter descended and landed on a relatively spacious mountainous area. Chu Feng jumped down without asking. Oh my god, it's really Chu Feng. He's been intercepted. He's in big trouble. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. They drew in a breath of cold air. The beasts were definitely well prepared. They even dared to broadcast live. What else was there to be afraid of? It was obvious that they were confident that they could kill Chu Feng. The prey has appeared. Enjoy. Huang Xiaoxian laughed as he left a message on his social media platform. Many people were shouting, "Find out where he is, capture him immediately and kill him." This weasel was too arrogant. Huang Xiaoxian left another message. It has nothing to do with me. I also heard the news from a friend that there are experts from other tribes going on a hunt. What's there to be nervous about? Just enjoy and see who will become the prey. Who knows, maybe the plot will be reversed. Chapter 130. Huang Xiaoxian was immensely proud of himself. It was obvious that the beast race was going to kill Chu Feng, yet he was putting on an act. In the live broadcast, Chu Feng was standing alone in the forest. It was obvious that he had already discovered the enemy and was staring straight ahead. At this time, everyone was nervous. The beast race was really going to kill Chu Feng. Was it going to be the same as last time? In the forest, there was a thick layer of fallen leaves. This was the result of many years of accumulation. The lowest layer had already turned black. Chu Feng stepped on the ground, occasionally emitting light sounds. There was no need to conceal his tracks, as both sides had already discovered each other. Kong Xing stood in mid-air, handsome and refined. His purple hair was as smooth as silk, and his face was filled with a faint smile, as if he didn't care about anything. He did not reveal his true form, but a pair of wings of light appeared on his back, allowing him to hover in the air and look down. Whoosh! Kong Feng made his move. He was a quasi-king level expert from the peacock race. With a flap of his wings, he appeared behind Chu Feng, cutting off his path of retreat. He revealed a faint smile and said, "If you can survive, you'll be considered heaven-defying." From his point of view, Chu Feng wouldn't be able to escape even if he grew wings. Who could stop 3 quasi-king level experts? Kong Chen was still in his human form. His feet stepped on the ground as he walked through the forest. His entire being exuded a sharp aura. He had his hands behind his back and looked to be in his 50s or 60s. As a quasi-king level expert, he was very arrogant. His expression was cold and filled with disdain. Because he felt that this was too much. Kong Chen stared at Chu Feng and said, 3 quasi-king level experts moved out together just to deal with a small character like you. Chu Feng was very calm and did not say anything. He was thinking about how he could keep everyone here. After all 3 of them could fly. On the internet, many people could not remain calm. Their hearts were in turmoil. The beast race had actually sent out 3 quasi-king level experts. This was a fatal trap, and there was no way out. Everyone already knew that last time, Chu Feng had used a special silver mine to send 2 experts tumbling, one dead and the other injured. What else could he rely on now? It was impossible for the beast race to be fooled again. The current situation was extremely grim, and he was trapped in a dangerous situation. Oh no, what should we do? Chu Feng is most likely in danger this time. There's no need to be afraid. Our side must have already taken action. How can we tolerate the arrogance of these beasts? Do they think they can just kill whoever they want? Someone said indignantly, which resonated with many people. Huang Shaoxian stood up again and posted a selfie. His face was full of smiles as he commented, "Everyone, don't get too excited. It's just an interesting hunting experience." Even at this juncture, he was still making sarcastic remarks. It made people want to beat him up. In the forest, Huang Xian was personally filming. Currently, there was only Chu Feng in the live broadcast. Huang Xian's figure was small and skinny, and his yellow hair was messy. He had a cheerful expression on his face, and if he still allowed Chu Feng to escape, it would be inexcusable. In his eyes, this was a game of cat and mouse. Once he had tortured Chu Feng enough, the game would end. "Let's begin," Huang Xian said as he approached Kong Chen and used his communicator to film from a close distance. Those who saw the live broadcast felt their hearts sink. Everyone understood that the killing intent had been unleashed. Huang Shaoxian was extremely excited because, in his eyes, he would soon be able to see Chu Feng's miserable state. The time for revenge had arrived. "Everyone, the show is about to begin. Let the hunt begin." Huang Shaoxian laughed arrogantly. Everyone was enraged, but there was nothing they could do. Bang! At this moment, the live broadcast shook violently, and even Chu Feng disappeared from the screen. There was no one else in the live broadcast. Evidently, the 2 sides had engaged in a fierce battle, which actually affected the recording. In a split second, blood splattered across the screen, sending chills down the spines of many people. One had to know that there were 3 quasi-beast kings there. Chu Feng could not withstand them at all. Everyone knew that he was far from being a match for them. Huang Shaoxian laughed heartily. The moment the blood splattered, he felt extremely comfortable. Soon, many people cried out in alarm, feeling very uncomfortable. That was because when the blood splattered, there were also a few broken teeth that streaked across the screen and were clearly captured. Some people felt suffocated. Was Chu Feng being humiliated? It was painful to be broadcasted like this in front of so many people. It was truly cruel. He had killed the Ash Wolf King, and in many people's hearts, he was a brave warrior who should be respected. But now, he was being humiliated like this. It was truly unbearable. Haha, all my teeth have been knocked out. How delightful, how delightful! Huang Shaoxian laughed unbridledly. He quickly left a message to express his joy, saying, I hope the plot can be reversed. This was igniting the fire, looking down on everyone and provoking them. He was taking joy in others' misfortune, making people want to drag him out and beat him up. Bang! The live broadcast became unclear and shook violently. The recording equipment seemed to have fallen to the ground. People were astonished. What had happened? Huang Shaoxian was also bewildered. Something was wrong with the situation? Soon, people heard a painful groan. Following that, the ground shook and the communicator was picked up by someone. Afterward, Chu Feng's face appeared on the screen. This was equivalent to taking a selfie. He was completely unharmed. What's going on? The internet exploded. Everyone was astonished. The injured one was not him? Huang Shaoxian was dumbfounded. What was going on? He had laughed too happily just now. Even now, the smile on his face had not yet solidified. Chu Feng was holding Huang Shaoxian's communicator and recording the scene on the ground. The internet was silent at first, but then it boiled over. Amidst the clamor, people saw the truth. A yellow-haired old man had a bloody nose and swollen face. His head was almost split open, and his mouth was full of blood. When he opened his mouth, it could be seen that more than half of his teeth had fallen out. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He looks like a weasel. He's definitely one of the quasi-beast kings. Someone shouted on the internet. Huang Shaoxian was completely dumbfounded. Wasn't this the old man from his clan? How could he be beaten up like this? It was too miserable. His eyes were swollen into slits, and he could barely open them. His nose had collapsed and half of his teeth had fallen out. Impossible! Huang Shaoxian shouted. 3 quasi-beast kings had gone to kill Chu Feng together. How could there be an accident? There should be no suspense at all. Haha, that little weasel was right. The plot has been reversed. Someone on the internet couldn't stop laughing. What a divine reversal! Huang Shaoxian, you're really direct. Every word you say is worth 1,000 gold. You're too accurate. A group of people were shouting and laughing, calling for Huang Shaoxian to come out and perform another divination. Huang Shaoxian was about to die from anger. How could something like this happen? Especially since this was a live broadcast. He had originally wanted to humiliate Chu Feng and make him lose face. Who would have thought that there would be a reversal right from the start? Their quasi-beast king had been beaten so badly that he had to look for his teeth all over the ground. In the mountain forest, Chu Feng didn't deal with Kong Chen first. Instead, he chose to deal with Huang Xian. That was because he found this old weasel to be extremely displeasing to the eye. He actually dared to broadcast live and treated Chu Feng like a piece of meat on a chopping board. Chu Feng rushed over ferociously and swung his fists like a tempest. Of course, he was suppressing his strength for fear of scaring away the experts of the peacock race. Hence, he could only display a portion of his strength. A flurry of punches landed on Huang Xian's face, causing him to scream miserably. Huang Xian threw away his communicator and fought back. In the end, he was still beaten miserably and was sent flying with his teeth falling all over the ground. His lungs were about to explode from anger. He was a quasi-beast king, yet he was ambushed by that brat in a moment of carelessness. How miserable! Of course, he was also somewhat astonished. He sensed that Chu Feng's strength was also at the quasi-beast king realm. After disappearing for a few days, this young man's strength had actually improved by leaps and bounds. Not far away, Kong Chen put down his hands. He was extremely shocked. When he saw Chu Feng charging at Huang Xian, he was still laughing, thinking that the old weasel would definitely teach him a lesson. Who would have thought that the result would be like this? In the air, Kong Xing and Kong Feng's hearts trembled with astonishment. This opponent's strength had greatly improved. Quasi-Beast King. You've eaten a mutant fruit and broken through to the Quasi-Beast King realm. Even now, no one believed that Chu Feng was a true king-level entity. Was it because only a few days had passed? That wasn't very realistic. According to common sense, even if one were to eat a top-grade mutant fruit, they would only be able to reach the Quasi-Beast King realm. They would need time to accumulate strength before they could break through to the true king level. They were all at the same realm and understood this logic. Even Chu Feng had doubted whether he could break through on Mount Tai, but he had succeeded. Old man, you're really keeping up with the times. You're even streaming. Fine, I'll give you a close-up. Smile. Chu Feng held the communicator in his hand and smiled brilliantly at Huang Xian. You go away. Huang Xian flew into a rage out of humiliation. Such a disgraceful thing had actually happened to him. The internet was in an uproar, causing huge wave. Everyone was shocked. This was truly a plot twist. Had Chu Feng really become a quasi-beast king? Beating up the old weasel was not a fluke. Huang Shaoxian was so depressed that he wanted to slap himself. He felt that he had jinxed things. He had only said it casually to stir up people's emotions. Who would have thought that his words would become a prophecy? People from the Weasel clan are indeed extraordinary. They're all great immortals, and their words are too accurate. I can't help but admire them, haha. Huang Shaoxian, you can finish your apprenticeship now. In the future, you can change your name to Iron Mouth Straightforward, Immortal Huang. The group of people laughed heartily. They were in a good mood as they mocked and ridiculed Huang Shaoxian. However, the laughter soon died down. That was because Chu Feng was about to face 3 quasi-beast kings. It was hard to say whether he would be able to escape alive. In the mountains, Chu Feng deliberately put on a solemn expression and said, "We're all in the same realm. If I want to leave, you can't stop me." At this point, he retreated and chose a good position to break out of the encirclement. Where do you think you're going? Kill him. Huang Xian flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was the first to rush over. His body expanded and transformed into a 10-meter-long giant yellow beast. He roared and pounced towards Chu Feng. A gale arose, sending sand and pebbles flying. Even the trees were blown away. The scene of a berserk quasi-beast king was extremely terrifying. Kill him! Seeing that Chu Feng was about to escape, Kong Chen rushed over with a swoosh. Although he was in human form, his speed was subsonic. He used the Wisdom King Fist to attack Chu Feng's back. You've come and you still want to leave? Leave your head behind. Kong Feng coldly said from midair. His peacock body blossomed with multicolored divine radiance, especially his tail, which was extremely resplendent. He swooped down to kill Chu Feng. The situation was unfolding. If the 3 quasi-beast kings were bent on killing, it would be extremely terrifying. The entire area was filled with thunderous sounds as the mountainous terrain was cracked apart. In the blink of an eye, the 4 experts tangled together and moved continuously, destroying large patches of forest. These creatures did not seem to be made of flesh and blood. Boulders, ancient trees, and cliffs were all smashed apart under their attacks. It was a terrifying scene. It was hard to imagine how powerful their bodies were. It was obvious that ordinary firearms were ineffective against them. Chu Feng frowned. Kong Xing had been hovering in the air all this time. Otherwise, Chu Feng would have dealt a heavy blow long ago. Why would he continue to tangle with them? Uncle Feng, Uncle Chen, be careful, Kong Xing said with a solemn expression. Chu Feng frowned. He knew that he could not wait any longer. It was time to act. As for Kong Xing, he would use the thunderous to kill him from afar. Boom! Suddenly, Chu Feng broke through the sound barrier as the air behind him exploded. This was a terrifying speed that only a king-level entity could possess. He had surpassed the speed of sound, creating a terrifying sonic boom. Rumble like a sudden clap of thunder, Chu Feng leaped up to meet the diving peacock. He punched upwards, his fist piercing through the air and creating a sonic boom. Kong Feng let out a blood-curdling scream as his face contorted. His chest had been punched through, causing blood to spurt out. Amidst the terrifying sound of an explosion, Chu Feng punched out with his fist and pressed down on the peacock's body. Then, the peacock dived towards Kong Chen. He wanted to deal with the flying beast first. Kong Chen was astonished. Everything had happened in an instant. This young man had actually erupted with such power in such a short period of time. How was this a prey? This was clearly a terrifying beast that wanted to hunt him down. He was clearly here to feed himself, to send himself into the tiger's mouth. This was a king-level entity. The information they had received was wrong and ridiculous. How could 3 quasi-beast kings dare to challenge a true king-level entity? Bang! Kong Chen flew backwards, his arms crossed in front of his chest. However, they exploded in an instant, turning into a mist of blood. He could not block the terrifying attack of a king-level entity. If he did not use his arms to block, his chest would have been pierced through. Too terrifying! Huang Xian's hair stood on end as his golden fur stood on end. He turned around and fled. Still want to run? With a swoosh, Chu Feng shot through the air, cutting off the path ahead as if he was flying. The current him was like a demonic god. Brothers and sisters, please vote for the holy ground. Chapter 131. It was a bit late because he had written such a long chapter. Roar! Huang Xian roared as his golden fur stood on end. At this moment, he looked extremely ferocious. Even though he was a weasel, he was over 10 meters long and looked like a prehistoric giant beast. It was just that there was a fly in the ointment. At least half of its fangs had been broken by Chu Feng, and it was even broadcasted live. Even someone as strong as Chu Feng, a true king-level entity, felt his pupils constrict and his body tense up. With a swoosh, he retreated over 100 meters away. He actually retreated to avoid Huang Xian. At almost the same time, Huang Xian raised his tail and spat out a yellow mist that enveloped the entire forest. This was a life-saving technique of the weasel race. The poisonous gas it emitted was unbearably stinky. The entire forest was covered in a layer of yellow mist that covered an extremely large area. Chu Feng could not resist it, but he felt disgusted. Just the thought of bathing in the stench of a weasel's excrement gave him goosebumps. Thus, he retreated at the last moment to avoid the sharp edge. Kong Feng screamed. Not long ago, his chest had been punched by Chu Feng. His blood dyed the forest red and he fell from the sky. It was difficult for him to move now. As a result, he was enveloped by the yellow mist. This kind of poisonous gas irritated him so much that he almost fainted. Cough! Kong Chen's arms had been smashed. At this moment, he staggered back with a pale face. He was in an even worse state. He was not far behind Huang Xian and had been sprayed head-on. That kind of stench almost made him vomit. These two were from the peacock race and were naturally obsessed with cleanliness. This was an inherited trait of their race. The stench of the weasel's excrement made their heads spin and they almost coughed up bile. If they had a choice, they would rather mutilate themselves or be beaten up by others than be shrouded in this yellow mist. It was simply unbearable. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Chu Feng stood in the forest hundreds of meters away and took out a large bough from his back. He had always carried it with him, wrapped in silk and carried it on his back. Now, he began to use it. He was not shooting Huang Xian. Even if this weasel was cunning and vicious, he was not worried. As long as it was on the ground, it would not be able to escape. His divine instinct had already locked onto it. Whoosh! Chu Feng drew the thunderous and shot out an iron arrow. With his current king-level combat strength, Even an ordinary arrow would be enough to kill all of his enemies. The terrifying sound of thunder rang out as the iron arrow shot up, bringing with it a glaring arc of electricity. In the blink of an eye, it flew towards the sky, aiming straight for Kong Xing's head. Kong Xing was too vigilant. When he saw the changes on the ground, he had already flown up to the sky at the first instance. He did not delay at all and was extremely decisive. Xiao! The iron arrow soared through the air, flying for more than 10 li. This kind of speed was extremely terrifying, almost catching up to Kong Xing. He was so shocked that his expression completely changed. He simply couldn't believe it. Puff! In the end, the iron arrow brushed past him and exploded. Arcs of electricity crackled and radiance flourished. The scene was terrifying. Kong Xing touched his arm. There was a wound there, and fresh blood was flowing out. It was too dangerous. Just a graze and he was injured. He once again charged upwards, distancing himself from Chu Feng. He then looked down with his purple pupils incomparably cold. Today's events had shaken him greatly. A young human expert had become a king-level entity in just a few days. He didn't even stop at the quasi-king level and directly broke through. Chu Feng immediately contacted Lu Tong and said, "Old man, arrange for the people on the ground to lock onto that peacock in the sky. I will chase after him after a while." Then, he leapt up as if he was flying, traversing the sky above the forest. In the blink of an eye, he was already 200 to 300 meters away. This kind of speed caused the two peacock quasi-kings, who were on the verge of fainting, to shudder in fear. That was definitely a true king-level entity. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have such terrifying jumping ability. Huang Xian was now like a stray dog. His 10-meter-long body was completely tensed up as he ran madly through the forest. His slender body was like a yellow waterfall as he traversed through the mountains and ravines in an attempt to escape. He couldn't even muster up the slightest bit of resistance against that human. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have come here even if he was beaten to death. Stop a true king-level entity? He must be tired of living. Whoosh! Chu Feng leapt up once again. This time, he traversed another 300 meters and landed directly in front of Huang Xian, cutting off his path. Aolo! Huang Xian's eyes were incomparably blazing. He raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl. He knew that begging for mercy was useless, so he used his most powerful technique. 2 beams of resplendent golden light shot out from his eyes. He unleashed a spiritual attack on Chu Feng. No matter what, he didn't want to sit still and wait for death. He hoped to escape. Humph! Chu Feng only snorted coldly. Containing the demonic ox roar, he dispersed the golden light beam without moving an inch. He was as steady as Mount Tai. Swish! In reality, this wasn't Huang Xian's killing move. At this time, a flying sword flew close to the ground and abruptly exploded. It then soared into the air, emitting a blinding light as it pierced towards Chu Feng's abdomen. Clang! With a flick of his finger, Chu Feng directly knocked on the snow-white sword. A metallic sound rang out as the palm-sized flying sword cracked and exploded with a bang. Huang Xian was scared out of his wits. That flying sword was no ordinary item. It was forged from rare metals extracted from meteorites and was incomparably sturdy. He had once tried to cut open diamond, and it could be said that its sturdiness and sharpness were astonishing. In the end, it was destroyed by a flick of Chu Feng's finger. How terrifying was his physical body! Thinking about it, he was truly horrified. At this level, Chu Feng could naturally look down on quasi-king level entities. Huang Xian's fur stood on end, and his entire body emitted a golden light. He raised his tail again, and even wanted to turn around and attack Chu Feng. But this time, he didn't have the chance. The moment Chu Feng shattered the flying sword with his peerless strength, he had already closed in and blasted out a punch. Especially this time, he used a divine ability. His fist imprint emitted a blazing light beam that shot out like a laser beam. The scene was terrifying. After breaking free from the shackles, Chu Feng's entire right arm had activated a mysterious power that was too terrifying. The silver light was like a bolt of lightning, piercing through all obstructions and splitting Huang Xian's body in half. The light beam emitted by Chu Feng's fist was like a sharp sword. It was silvery white and resplendent as it pierced through Huang Xian's forehead. Then, he slashed downwards with his fist, splitting Huang Xian into two halves. Chu Feng himself was astonished. This was the first time he had used such a divine ability against an enemy. This was an ability he had obtained after severing his first shackle, and its divine might was extraordinary. Boom! The air exploded like a clap of thunder. Chu Feng reached the speed of sound and then surpassed it, traversing through the forest. Only after he had gone quite a distance did he produce the sound of an explosion in the air. Moments later, he appeared in front of Kong Chen and Kong Feng, blocking their path. Earlier on, a single punch from Chu Feng had caused Kong Chen's arms to explode into a mist of blood. That was also his wings, and now he could no longer transform into his true form to escape. Beside him, Kong Feng was in an even worse state. His chest had been pierced through and he was drenched in blood. He was so weak that he could barely stand, let alone fly. We are quasi-kings of the peacock bloodline. There are only a few experts of this level in our race. If we die, the peacock king will be furious. You are very strong, but you are still a rising king. You can't withstand the peacock king's wrath. Actually, we can sit down and have a talk. There's no enmity that can't be resolved. We are willing to pay a certain price for this. Kong Chen spoke. Although he was very proud, he didn't want to die. He hoped that this human would compromise and let them go. Threatening me? Chu Feng sneered. This race was truly arrogant. Even as a prisoner, they wanted to use both the carrot and the stick, using the Peacock King's name to scare him. You guys can go on your way. Chu Feng finished speaking and stepped forward. No, you've misunderstood. How could we dare to threaten a true king-level expert? We only want to have a talk with you. Don't attack, we can talk things out. Kong Chen was anxious and fearful. If there was a chance, who would be willing to die? No matter how arrogant the peacock race was, it was impossible for them to ignore death. If the Peacock King was here, he might be able to negotiate with me. You guys are not worthy. A black dagger appeared in Chu Feng's hand. With a ferocious slash, two heads flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, they had reverted to their true forms. The corpses of two huge peacocks appeared on the ground. They had been ambushed twice by the peacock race, and both of them were quasi-king level experts. How could Chu Feng let them off so easily? It was useless even if they brought up the Peacock King. Old man, where did Kong Sheng escape to? Should we lock onto him? Chu Feng contacted Lu Tong. He's heading south. We've used our weapons on the ground to kill him, injuring him several times. However, he's fine and is still flying south. Alright. Chu Feng strode towards the armed helicopter in the mountains. Then, the propellers turned and the helicopter quickly took off, heading south. The people in the helicopter stared at Chu Feng with fervent gazes. They had witnessed the battle with their own eyes. When they looked at Chu Feng, he was simply a god of war. This battle had been too clean and efficient, as if he had swept through dry weeds and smashed rotten wood. He had single-handedly swept through 3 quasi-beast kings, and even had to chase after the young expert of the peacock race who had escaped. Kong Sheng fled southward. There was a flame burning in his chest, and he was furious to the point of madness. This battle was too humiliating. 2 more quasi-king level experts of their bloodline had fallen, which was a huge loss. 3 quasi-kings, yet they had all died there. The other party did not even need to expend any effort to sweep them away. Right now, his entire body was covered in blood, fleeing in panic. This was truly a type of extraordinary humiliation. Along the way, He was almost hit by a missile, almost dying on the road. Soon, we will escape from human control, Kong Xing said through clenched teeth. His handsome face was full of unwillingness and resentment. Today was simply too sullen. He was injured, and one of his wings had almost been destroyed by a firearm. Hence, his speed had slowed down, and he did not dare to fly high in the air, lest he become an easy target. He was now sticking close to the forest, fleeing all the way to the lofty mountain range in front of him. The terrain there was complicated, and there was no human firepower. He could easily escape. Where do you think you're going? A thunderous roar came from behind. Kong Xing turned back just in time to see Chu Feng standing inside the armed helicopter. He had opened the door and knocked an arrow. With a swoosh, a bolt of lightning flew towards him. Pfft! He wanted to dodge, but it was impossible. That was an arrow fired by a king-level entity. He let out a blood-curdling scream as blood splattered everywhere. One of Kong Xing's wings was blasted apart, turning into a bloody mist. Only a small part of it remained intact and fell to the ground. Kong Xing's face contorted from the unbearable pain. He almost fell headfirst into the mountain. At this time, he was using his original body to fly. Such a heavy injury was too serious for him. However, he had an extraordinary ability. A pair of luminous wings appeared on his back, and his entire body was suffused with blood energy. It was as if he was on fire, and a blazing red light enveloped him. Swoosh! His speed increased by a large margin as he entered the mountain range. He used the mountain to block the attack of the armed helicopter as he fled for his life. He wanted to escape from Chu Feng's firing range. Chase him, Chu Feng commanded. He stood inside the armed helicopter, coldly looking ahead with his bow in hand, ready to shoot again at any time. The armed helicopter roared as it rushed into the mountain range, chasing after Kong Xing. Swoosh! Chu Feng's second iron arrow shot out like a startling rainbow. It shook the void and penetrated over 5 kilometers away. Its range was terrifying. This arrow hit its mark again, but unfortunately, it still failed to pierce a vital point. Kong Xing let out a blood-curdling scream as his other wing was pierced through and exploded on the spot. The other half of the wing fell to the ground. Kong Xing could only rely on his pair of luminous wings to escape in a panic. He plunged into the mountain range and circled around the mountains in order to evade the pursuit. He was extremely frightened. His divine instinct was exceptionally sharp, but he couldn't evade Chu Feng's iron arrow. This made him feel a sense of defeat. When Chu Feng's third arrow arrived, the feathers on Kong Xing's body fluttered as his hair and bones trembled. He ran with all his might. To him, the young man behind him was simply like a demonic god. It was too terrifying. Unfortunately, he couldn't evade. His tail exploded, and the brightest feathers were all separated from his body. They drifted down the mountain, stained with blood. Ah! Kong Xing let out a blood-curdling scream. It was too painful. This arrow almost made him faint, and he was almost driven mad. With a swoosh, the blood energy on his body erupted and boiled. His speed increased once again, and he actually emitted a sonic boom as he fled at an extreme speed. Such a terrifying speed was extremely strenuous for his physical body. Fine cracks appeared on some parts of his body, and traces of blood flowed out. However, he couldn't care less and continued to flee like a madman. On the helicopter, the people accompanying him, even though they were all mutants, couldn't help but shiver uncontrollably. His senses are too sharp, he dodged the arrow. My arrow was actually aimed at his back, Chu Feng said. The others had strange expressions on their faces. Now Chu Feng's every move was awe-inspiring. He was like a demonic god, sweeping away all obstacles along the way. He killed quasi-beast kings and chased after the geniuses of the peacock race. Not good! The pilot shouted. The helicopter was running out of fuel. The journey from Tianjin to Shuntian was too long, and now, they were chasing after Chu Feng like this. The fuel consumption was almost depleted. Count yourself lucky. Chu Feng put away his longbow. At the same time, he asked them to find a suitable place to land. He also asked the mutants to bring back the peacock wings and the brightest feathers on its tail. These people were all very excited. They reckoned that Chu Feng would show them the pictures when the time came. At that time, there would definitely be a great commotion. After a long time, a few helicopters arrived to help Chu Feng transport the spoils of war. The feathers of the peacock race genius and the huge corpse of a quasi-beast king shocked them. Chu Feng left first, heading towards Shuntian. At this time, many people outside felt that time was passing like a year. They were all waiting for the result of the battle. This was because after Chu Feng exchanged blows with the quasi-beast kings, the communicator was thrown to the ground, and no one was recording it anymore. A few hours had passed, but there was still no news from him. Our race will win. With 3 quasi-beast kings joining hands, even if Chu Feng becomes a quasi-beast king, he will still die. Huang Shaoxian appeared again. Although he felt a little guilty and didn't know what the result would be, he cheered himself on, believing that Chu Feng would be defeated. Weasel, you still dare to talk nonsense? The tables will turn in a while. Someone ridiculed him. Haha, that's right. Since you've said so, we can all rest assured. There will definitely be another divine turn in a while. Many people followed the thread, ridiculing him. Bullsh *t. If the tables turn this time, I'll *king kneel down and call you ancestors. I'll eat the communicator I'm using right now. I don't believe in heresy. Huang Shaoxian was anxious. He had truly been provoked. The previous reversal had dealt a huge blow to him, leaving him dumbfounded for a long time. Now, he was naturally praying for the 3 quasi-beast kings to kill Chu Feng. He didn't want to see that hateful person ever again. No way, if you kneel down and call us ancestors, won't we also become weasels? Haha, no matter. I'll wait for him to kneel down. I'm looking forward to another reversal and angering this weasel to death. Countless people left comments on Huang Shaoxian's social media, betting with him. Huang Shaoxian was enraged. He wrote, "You bunch of unruly people, stupid. Just wait and see. Chu Feng's life is definitely gone, and you still want to turn things around? Dream on." However, the next moment, he was horrified. His hair stood on end. He turned around and saw a familiar figure. Chu Feng was standing at the door of his room, a bright smile on his face, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. He greeted, "I haven't seen you for a few days. How have you been?" "Oh my God!" Huang Shaoxian screamed in fright, almost falling off his wheelchair. His whole body was trembling and his face was pale. He never expected Chu Feng to appear in his residence. One had to know that this was a new place and was extremely secretive. Outsiders didn't know about it. Huang Shaoxian was on the verge of tears. This was too frightening for him. He revealed a smile uglier than crying. "Hello, big brother Chu Feng. I've always admired you. Don't come over. We can talk this out," he screamed. His whole body was covered in goosebumps. He was terrified. "Oh, you're a media expert. Let me see. Hey, you've posted so many pictures and messages. Many people are following you." Chu Feng picked up his communicator and carefully browsed through the things on it. "Oh, you keep cursing me on this, and even made a bet with someone?" Chu Feng had a faint smile on his face. "Come, let's take a selfie and then you can post it," Chu Feng said. He used his communicator to take a selfie of the two of them. In the photo, Chu Feng was smiling brightly, while Huang Shaoxian was on the verge of tears. The contrast was too great. "Upload it," Chu Feng said. "Big brother, can we discuss this? Don't upload this photo. I'll help you take a more heroic one," Huang Shaoxian said with a sad face. "Hurry up." Chu Feng was full of murderous intent. In the end, Huang Shaoxian braced himself and uploaded it. As a result, the internet was quiet at first, then it exploded. Oh my God, what did I just see? Chapter 132. Everyone was stunned. That was why there was a short period of silence. Then, the clamor erupted like a volcano, blazing and passionate. Haha! I'm not seeing things, am I? This is too miraculous. Is this real? It's unbelievable. These two actually appeared in the same photo. This scene is too beautiful. Look at Huang Xiaoxian's expression and eyes. He's about to cry and yet he's smiling, haha. Many people were laughing wildly. They couldn't help but see the two taking a selfie at such a close distance. Their jaws almost dropped to the ground. This matter was too bizarre and outrageous. Many people couldn't believe their eyes and their mouths were wide open. One had to know that Huang Shaoxian was just cursing Chu Feng, declaring that there would be no comeback this time. He was arrogantly challenging Chu Feng and spouting nonsense. Who would have thought that these two would take a selfie in the blink of an eye? This really made people speechless. The internet was in an uproar. The final reversal was too sudden and many people weren't mentally prepared. How come I can't help but want to laugh? Haha, look at Huang Xiaoxian's cowardly appearance. It's too funny. Look at that silly expression in his eyes. I bet he's in a state of shock right now. Who would have thought his lair would be turned upside down? I can understand his feelings. He was full of confidence and arrogance just now. But when he turned around and saw Chu Feng, his scalp was about to explode. He can already be considered strong if he didn't piss his pants. Haha, the entire internet was making fun of Huang Shaoxian. The development of this matter was too fast and unexpected. No one had expected such a scene to occur. At the same time, people were also shocked. Chu Feng had appeared and returned to Shuntian safely. Did this mean that the other three quasi-kings had been defeated or even killed by him? This wasn't a small matter. Many people were making wild guesses. All the major powers took action immediately to find out the truth. That was because this matter had great implications. All the major corporations ordered their subordinates to investigate this matter and find out what had happened to the three quasi-kings. At this time, Huang Shaoxian was trembling, half from fear and the other half from anger. On the social media platform, those comments made him go crazy. He wanted nothing more than to smash his communicator into pieces. This was outrageous and intolerable bullying. He was ridiculed by countless people, and every single one of them stabbed at his lungs, making him furious. However, as soon as he turned around and saw Chu Feng, he became listless. He really wanted to cry. This wasn't an act. He hadn't expected this kind of result. He felt that ever since he met Chu Feng, he had suffered 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Chu Feng was also looking at him with a murderous look. He didn't have a good impression of this weasel. Brother Chu, let's talk this out. Huang Xiaoxian's voice trembled. His hair stood on end and he felt horrified. Ever since Chu Feng stepped into this room, he had the urge to pee. Just as the outside world guessed, he was truly terrified. He felt cold from head to toe, and he was simply filled with despair. Earlier on, he was full of mettle and arrogant, challenging everyone on the internet. But now, it was as if he had eaten 2 dead children. He was so uncomfortable that he wanted to die, and he was trembling in fear. There's another weasel. Where is he? Chu Feng asked. He was looking for Huang Yun. That was also a quasi-beast king. It had lost a leg at the silver mine, and its tail had been chopped off by Chu Feng. It would be very dangerous to keep it around. He's not with me, Huang Shaoxian replied. He was somewhat panic-stricken and his face was deathly pale. At this time, the old man Lu Tong came in with a group of people behind him. They had long since surrounded this place. Leave it to me, Lu Tong said. In truth, Chu Feng really wanted to kill this weasel. If he were to escape, he would become a scourge sooner or later. The old man Lu Tong seemed to know what he was thinking. Don't waste it. This is a mutated beast that can transform. It has great research value. We must make good use of it. Huang Xiaoxian's hair stood on end after hearing this. His scalp was about to explode. He hadn't wasted these days studying human culture. How could he not know what the so-called great research value meant? He almost fainted from fright. He screamed, "What are you doing? Don't touch me!" Chu Feng laughed. This weasel was usually so fierce, but it turned out he was so afraid of death. Huang Xiaoxian became anxious and shouted, "Brother Chu, big brother, I was wrong. Give me a chance to make up for my mistake. Don't send me away. This little brother is willing to follow you everywhere and be your steed." Lu Tong looked at him and said, "Not bad. How long has it been? You've already learned to follow me everywhere. You've really read a lot of books about us humans." Huang Xiaoxian nodded like a little chick pecking at grains, trying his best to show off. "What books have you read?" Lu Tong asked. "A lot, Qin Hui's biography, Wei Zhongxian, Hixin." Huang Xiaoxian counted with his fingers which books he had read. "None of them are good. Birds of a feather flock together." Lu Tong slapped him on the back of the head. As expected of a weasel, it was natural for him to like this kind of people. Chu Feng walked out of the room and came to the lawn in the courtyard. Huang Xiaoxian was heartbroken. He shouted, "Brother Chu, don't go. Take me with you. Don't let this weird old man send me to some research institute." "Who are you calling a weird old man?" Lu Tong's face darkened. He ordered his men to tie him up and took out his communicator to contact a first-class laboratory. "Help! Murder!" Huang Xiaoxian screamed. Lu Tong scolded, "Behave yourself and you'll have a chance to live. If you scream again, I'll skin you alive and send you to the laboratory." "Heavens, how can you humans be so cruel? You're even darker than us!" Huang Xiaoxian cried. "If you're willing to cooperate, I promise you'll live." Lu Tong comforted him. He wanted to ask him many more questions and was afraid he would break down first. "I swear I'll cooperate." Huang Xiaoxian swore with tears streaming down his face. Lu Tong's methods were brilliant. He didn't even need to use torture to scare Huang Xiaoxian out of his wits. Huang Xiaoxian spilled everything he should or shouldn't say. This included how many weasels there were on Mount Pan, how strong they were, and the likes and dislikes of the old ancestor. He confessed everything without hiding anything. "All right, send him to the laboratory." When the interrogation was over, Lu Tong waved his hand and ordered his men to take him away. "Stupid old man, you're not trustworthy. You can't do this," Huang Xiaoxian howled. Lu Tong was still bluffing. "Don't worry, I'll let you out alive. Of course, you have to perform well and cooperate." Once Huang Xiaoxian was sent away, Lu Tong's expression darkened. "Let's go." "What's wrong?" Chu Feng was puzzled. "Go catch Huang Yun. That weasel is too daring. He wants to kill your parents," Lu Tong said. "What?" Chu Feng was furious. The next moment they left at top speed. Chu Feng was truly enraged. That quasi-beast king actually wanted to harm his parents in retaliation. This caused his killing intent to surge to the heavens. "Don't worry, nothing bad will happen," Lu Tong consoled him. He had been feeling that something was wrong for the past few days. He had heard reports that Chu Feng's parents weren't in good spirits. He had thought that it was caused by their longing for Chu Feng. Only now did he understand that the quasi-beast king of the weasel lineage was using his terrifying spiritual power to slowly kill them. Chu Feng had cut off Huang Yun's tail. This old weasel was extremely vengeful and was thinking of ways to exact revenge. He didn't dare to openly provoke the Hollow Jade Temple, but he wanted to kill the two without anyone knowing. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to barge into the Hollow Jade Temple. But this old weasel had crossed the line. Even Lu Tong was furious. A few days ago, He was still assuring Chu Feng that the hollow jade temple was impregnable and no one would dare to barge in. But now, this weasel had slapped his face. They traveled as fast as lightning and soon returned. "Dad, Mom." Chu Feng looked at the two. The situation wasn't as bad as he had imagined. Although they weren't in good spirits, it wasn't a big problem. "Little Feng." The two were pleasantly surprised. They had already found out from the internet that Chu Feng had returned. They had been extremely worried for the past few hours. Ever since Chu Feng encountered the three quasi-beast kings, Chu Feng had disappeared without a trace. Although they didn't know what had happened to the three quasi-beast kings, Chu Feng's reappearance was the best news for them. "Dad, Mom, I'm fine. Sorry for making you worry. Tonight we'll cook a pot of peacock meat to nourish ourselves," Chu Feng said with a smile. "Haha, good, let's drink a few cups tonight." Chu Ziyuan laughed. "Dad, Mom, don't move. Let me take a look," Chu Feng said. The next moment, his eyes shone brightly. This was a true king-level divine instinct. His spiritual power shot out from his forehead like a flame, incomparably divine. "Duo!" He let out a light shout that contained the demon ox, shaking the four directions. His spiritual power surged. Chu Ziyuan and Wang Jing's vision darkened. They staggered and almost fell. At the same time, two balls of faint golden energy rushed out from the top of their heads, accompanied by a treacherous cry. This was the spiritual power left behind by Huang Yun. Following Chu Feng's soft shout, the two masses of energy exploded with a bang and were directly annihilated. Lu Tong, who had been waiting outside, rushed in after hearing the commotion. "Are you all right?" Chu Feng carried Chu Ziyuan and Wang Jing to their bed. He pulled the blanket over them and watched them fall asleep. He returned to the living room with a gloomy expression. "I'm fine now, but if I came back a few days later, I would have been in danger. That weasel from Mount Pan is too much." Chu Feng's killing intent was aroused. In just a few days, that old weasel had almost taken his parents' lives. Lu Tong immediately blamed himself. "I'm sorry, I didn't expect something like this to happen." Chu Feng shook his head. This was not his fault, because the defense of this residential area was already in place. There was no big problem. The main problem was that weasel's cultivation was too profound. Lu Tong said, "I've just found out that he was hiding in the sewers, casting spells. But today you fought against three quasi-king level experts. The commotion was too big and scared him away. That old weasel didn't dare to make a move directly. He left behind two balls of energy, hoping to weaken the two a bit every day. After a long time, their deaths would not be so shocking. In short, the old weasel was very afraid of the hollow jade temple. First it was Su Wani, now it's this weasel. Who knows who will come in the future?" Chu Feng's voice was cold. He stood up and walked to the window. Gazing into the distance, he said, "I want to establish my might. Let those people with ill intentions know how serious the consequences will be once they implicate my family." His voice was cold, extremely cold. "What do you want to do?" Lu Tong's heart was pounding. He had a feeling that something big was about to happen. "Old man, do you want to play big?" Chu Feng asked. "How big?" Lu Tong's eyelids were twitching. "Flatten a mountain and destroy a stronghold." "I'm going to take down a mountain," Chu Feng said coldly. Chapter 133. Yes. Chu Feng nodded solemnly. This was not an impulsive decision, but a sincere one. This time it was too dangerous. If he had not discovered it in time, wouldn't his parents have been killed? This caused Chu Feng to feel a wave of lingering fear. If he let this matter go so easily, there would be a second time. Who knows, the next time someone would target him like this and treat his parents as his weakness. At that time, there might be some accidents that would no longer be as simple as threats and intimidation. Chu Feng decided to take the initiative and kill his way to fame. He wanted everyone to understand that as long as he was alive, they could not scheme against his parents. Otherwise, their fates would be miserable and they would suffer 10 times, no, 100 times more vengeance. Flatten the mountain stronghold, take down Mount Pan and kill the Beast King there. This was Chu Feng's plan. He wanted to strike like a thunderbolt and sweep through this race. What demons and monsters! What treacherous tricks! He would kill his way there alone and crush them all with his fists. Something big is about to happen. Lu Tong's mind was uneasy. He could not make a decision immediately because the implications of this matter were too great. Mount Pan had already been occupied by a Beast King. If Chu Feng were to kill his way there and challenge a veteran king-level entity, would he really be able to take it down? This matter would have far-reaching consequences. It was equivalent to poking a hornet's nest and causing an incalculable storm. There might even be other chain reactions. Lu Tong was very cautious and his expression was solemn. He needed to think carefully. Old man, the more complicated your thinking is, the more apprehensive you become. Are you worried that the other Beast Kings will make things difficult for you? Chu Feng asked. Yes, the consequences will be dire. Lu Tong replied. Chu Feng's words were forceful. There are two sides to every coin. Don't you feel that some of the beast races are too tyrannical? The ash wolf massacring the city, the beast tide, why are they always the ones attacking? I feel that it is necessary to kill the chicken to warn the monkey and set an example. Chu Feng added, moreover, Kong Sheng, Huang Xian, and the rest are too arrogant this time. They tried to kill me twice in a row, and even dared to destroy the plane. Do they really think we're pushovers? They can do whatever they want. Too presumptuous. Yes, I have indeed gone too far. Let me think about it, Lu Tong said and turned to leave. He too had a bellyful of anger. That was a safe flight route that humans had opened up. In the end, Kong Sheng, Huang Yun, Huang Xian, and the rest acted without restraint and destroyed the passenger plane. What else did they want to do next? The outside world was unable to calm down. A few hours had passed, but there was still no news of the three quasi-kings. What was going on? Right now, it was a vacuum period. In any case, now that Chu Feng had returned, and he had successfully passed through the death trap, did this mean that the other three powerhouses had been defeated and killed? Or could it be that the other three quasi-kings did not stop him and only allowed him to break out of the encirclement, leaving both sides unharmed? Now, everyone, be it the ordinary people or the major corporations, wanted to know the truth. This battle was simply too captivating, and everyone was paying attention to it. Even if Chu Feng is very powerful and a quasi-king level expert, it's impossible for him to kill three experts on his own. This isn't very realistic. I think he only broke out of the encirclement. Yes, the peacock race is extremely tyrannical. With two quasi-kings appearing at the same time, no one would be able to stop them and could only flee. Add to that the weasel that could use a flying knife, there's simply no way to defend against it. Apart from running away, I really can't think of any other way for Chu Feng to survive. This was the opinion of most people. They were inclined towards Chu Feng and hoped that he would personally kill those tyrannical beast race members. However, they felt that it wasn't very realistic. Some of the major corporations were also discussing this matter, and some even invited experts to perform simulations to reconstruct the process of the battle. He probably chose to break out of the encirclement and escape. This was recorded in the live broadcast at that time. Chu Feng's strategy was to escape, which led to the three quasi-kings chasing after him, an expert from a certain major power said. After all, Chu Feng had just broken through to the realm of three quasi-kings, so it should be quite difficult for him to deal with them. No one knew that Chu Feng was not a quasi-king, but a true king-level entity. That battle was nothing to him. In any case, Chu Feng is unharmed and has successfully broken out of the encirclement. He's still as amazing as ever. As expected of the Angel Ox. Chu Feng is too valiant. He actually managed to escape from the encirclement of 3 quasi-kings. How divine! Many people were incomparably happy to hear this. In any case, this was a joyous occasion. No one was willing to see the beast race act tyrannically and tyrannically. Chu Feng had offended the beast race time and time again. He had even successfully killed a peacock and cut off the tail of a weasel. He was indeed a deterrent. Now, the beast race had come for revenge, but they still couldn't do anything to him. This made people excited, and some hot-blooded youths were even more excited. They cheered loudly and drank in celebration. At this time, many people were ecstatic, especially Zhou Etienne, who was grinning from ear to ear. That was because, in just a few days, Chu Feng had caused a huge commotion. It was as if Demon Ox the Great Sage had ushered in a second spring, and the attendance rate had once again soared. It had broken all kinds of records and become a box office legend. Chu Feng, how are you? Chu Feng, are you injured? Chu Feng scrolled through his communicator. There were too many messages and many people were concerned about him. I'm fine. Chu Feng logged into his public platform and sent a concise message. How's the battle going? Immortal Chu, tell us quickly. At this time, both acquaintances and strangers flocked over to leave messages, eager to know the results. Even the major corporations were paying close attention to this matter. Some even used their official accounts to post messages. For instance, the people from the Archaic Alliance were asking how the 3 quasi-beast kings were doing. Chu Feng thought for a while and directly uploaded a picture. First, it was the headless corpses of the 2 peacocks, followed by the 10-meter-long weasel, and finally Kong Xing's feathers and wings. He posted all of them together and added a few words. The prey is bountiful. Boom. This was definitely a huge earthquake. Everyone on the internet was shocked and clamored. This news was too shocking. Even many major powers were dumbfounded. Those were 3 quasi-beast kings. They had gone to surround and kill Chu Feng, but in the end, they were all killed by him? Like a landslide or a tsunami, this caused a huge commotion. All parties could no longer sit still and began to take action, wanting to understand the details of this battle. Everyone was stupefied. Who would have thought that none of the 3 quasi-beast kings would survive? They were all killed by Chu Feng alone in the mountains. This kind of battle record was too glorious. A young man fighting 3 quasi-beast kings alone and killing them all. It was impossible not to cause an earthquake. Haha, boss is mighty. This kind of battle record is really frightening. Clairvoyant Du Huijin left a message. He, Ouyang Qing, Yi Qingru, and Chen Luoyan were all on their way to the Hollow Jade Temple to meet Chu Feng. When they saw this piece of news on the way, they were all shocked and then overjoyed. Many people left messages on the internet. The number of followers on Chu Feng's social media platform skyrocketed, even surpassing the number of followers of some of the most popular celebrities. Chu Feng, Angel Ox, you're really too mighty. This battle was simply the Demon Ox the Great Sage's performance. Good kill, you should be so domineering. Awesome, those beast kings are too arrogant. They destroyed our passenger plane and ambushed us halfway. They're truly unbridled. This is the way to deal with them. Immortal Chu, I look forward to the day you slay a beast king. The internet was in an uproar. The major media naturally couldn't just sit by and watch. They all took action to dig for inside information. In a short period of time, all kinds of reports flooded the internet. It could only be said that some reporters were resourceful enough to get in touch with the military. For instance, the mutant who piloted the helicopter for Chu Feng. He wanted to understand the situation and conduct a secret interview. However, the mutant refused, not daring to divulge any information. He only told him that Chu Feng was invincible. This made people's hearts itch even more. Many people began to ask around, and even Lu Tong was harassed. Quite a few people came looking for him. The old man immediately switched off his phone and didn't reply. He was extremely frustrated. Should he attack Mount Pan? He knew that Chu Feng was going to overturn the heavens. Killing a beast king, flattening a mountain and destroying a stronghold, this was definitely a heaven-piercing event. After Chu Feng posted the pictures, he still couldn't calm down. His communicator rang as many people called him. "Hello, Naoi. Are you hurt?" Linoy asked. "I'm fine. Oh right, I have some beautiful peacock feathers with me. I'm sure you can't buy them outside. Should I send some to you?" Chu Feng smiled. Following which, he was astonished to hear the sound of waves. After confirming that it wasn't an illusion, he asked, "Where are you?" "I'm at the shore of the Eastern Sea," Linoy replied softly. Chu Feng was shaken. "Why did you go there? The sea is very dangerous. Even creatures like flood dragons have evolved. You can't stay there for long." Linoy didn't hide anything. She told him that someone had discovered a golden light in a certain part of the Eastern Sea. It was suspected that the Fusang tree was about to come into being. A number of corporations had learned of this and were going out to sea together. "It's too dangerous. There are far more creatures in the sea than on land." Even the master of the roaming Jade Temple was forced to retreat. "It's too risky for you guys to go." "I'm not going out to sea this time. I'm only here to take a look," Linoy informed. This news was extremely shocking. The sea was no longer calm. Would the appearance of the legendary Fusang tree be accompanied by the birth of the golden crow? One had to know that even Mount Tai was suspected to have golden crow eggs. Additionally, there were many legends of immortal islands in the sea. Stories of immortality had been circulating since ancient times. There were alchemists going out to sea to search for them as early as the pre-Qin era. Now, with the upheavals, such islands might really appear. The two chatted for a while. Linoy ended the call after finding out that he wasn't injured. Very soon, Yellow Cattle also called and began a video call. This time, Yellow Cattle shocked Chu Feng out of his wit. He actually began to speak without writing and was immensely proud of himself. Of course, he didn't forget to congratulate Chu Feng for killing 3 quasi-beast kings in one battle. However, he was also very confident. He raised his head and told Chu Feng, "This king took that step earlier than you. Today I've become a king." Chu Feng felt quite odd after listening to his words. That was because this fellow was too young. He couldn't help but tease, "You sound like a baby. I'll call you Yellow Cattle from now on." "Chu Feng, you dare to be disrespectful to this king." Yellow Cattle tried to frighten him. "Little Yellow Cattle, I've already become a king-level expert 2 days ago." Chu Feng laughed mischievously. Yellow Cattle panted heavily and glared at him. He was originally in high spirits, but in the end, he had been dealt a blow. "Yellow Cattle, it seems you've found an extraordinary mutant tree in Mount Kunlun. However, my side isn't bad either. Why don't you bring Old Black with me to attack the mountain peak? I'm going to flatten the mountain stronghold soon. I heard there's a imperial sword technique there. Do you want to learn it?" Chu Feng urged, hoping to trick the 2 oxen back. They were definitely a powerful combination. If the 3 of them joined hands, they would be able to sweep through everything in their path. It wouldn't be impossible for them to seize the next famed mountain. The black yak moved closer to the camera and was extremely astonished. He stared at Chu Feng and said, "You've become a king-level expert?" He had an odd expression on his face. How long had it been? This brat was actually on par with Yellow Cattle. He knew very well how great the origins of Yellow Cattle were. It wasn't easy for him to come over from that world. This calf wasn't just talking about becoming a sage ancestor. He had that kind of foundation. But now, this human brat was like Yellow Cattle, rapidly becoming a king-level expert. It was truly shocking. "Oh, let me think about it. You've become a king-level expert, and Yellow Cattle is also a king-level expert. It's time for us to do something big." The black yak sat there cross-legged, rubbing his chin with his black hoof as he pondered. Very soon, the black yak raised his head. His eyes were bright as he said, "Brat Chu, the Vatican is currently flowing with rivers of blood. Many people have died, and even a few beast kings have fallen. It's a good time to pick up the leftovers. You should make some preparations. Later on, the three of us will attack Europe. If we really succeed in entering the Vatican's medicinal garden, our strength will definitely soar." Chu Feng was tempted. He didn't dare to go before because he wasn't strong enough. Now, he could really make a trip with this old yak. In his words, "Do you want to do something big?" He thought for a moment and said, "Black Boss, good things have appeared in the sea. I just received news that the Fusang tree in the Eastern Sea is about to come into being. Should we go east or west first?" "Are you stupid? The Fusang tree has just come into being. It'll take several months before it blooms. Of course, we'll go west first. There are too many good things growing in that medicinal garden. Some of them are humanoid, while others are living creatures. The most important thing is that the sky is filled with divine pollen. The fragrance assails our nostrils. It's a place that we must fight for." The black yak's spittle flew everywhere. He wanted nothing more than to kill his way to the west. But recently, he had heard that there were countless casualties and beast kings falling. He felt a bit guilty. If he could get Chu Feng to join him, he would have more confidence. After the call ended, Chu Feng fell into a daze. Soon after, Jiang Luoshan called. "Goddess, you want to treat me to a meal again?" Chu Feng asked lazily. Jiang Luoshan was originally in a good mood, but after hearing this, black lines appeared on her face. What did he mean by again? She really didn't like the sound of this. "Treat you? In your dreams, I'm not even in Shuntian," Jiang Luoshan taunted. "Then I'm relieved. I don't want to hear another 3 days and 2 nights of stories from you," Chu Feng said. "Chu Feng, are you looking for a beating? Don't think I can't deal with you just because you're a quasi-beast king. Bodhi Biogenetics has Buddha's disciples. Don't provoke me, or I'll bring my men to suppress you." Jiang Luoshan flipped out. That was because, ever since the storm with Chu Feng, there were still rumors going around that she was taking care of her pregnancy at home. "Speak, what business do you have with me?" Chu Feng asked. "Can you sell us some of the quasi-beast king meat you have?" Jiang Luoshan asked. She wanted to send it to the laboratory for research. "Sure, 1/2 kilogram of quasi-beast king meat for 50 kilograms of mutant soil," Chu Feng stated his conditions. "Why don't you just rob someone?" After haggling for a while, Jiang Luoshan decided to come to Shuntian within a few days. Not long after, Du Huijin, Yi Qingru, Ouyang Qing, and Chen Luoyan paid a visit to Chu Feng's house. "Boss, you're so awesome. The outside world is going to explode. You single-handedly killed 3 quasi-beast kings. This is so shocking that it caused an earthquake." Ouyang Qing and Du Huijin were never reserved and shouted as soon as they entered the house. Yi Qingru was also sizing him up and even pinched his arm, saying, "Are all quasi-beast kings so shiny? Your skin is so good, it gives me the motivation to move forward." She was born with long, wavy hair, beautiful and charming eyes, and a great figure. Her smile was bright and beautiful, brightening up the room. "Sister Qingru, your skin is very good. Boss's skin is abnormal. Look, it's as white as jade." Du Huijin flattered Yi Qingru. "Do you know what ice flesh and jade bones are?" Chu Feng glared at him. The others laughed. The sky was already dark. Chu Ziyuan and Wang Jing woke up and were overjoyed to see such a lively scene. "Go and call old man Lu Tong over. We're going to have a feast today. The meat of a quasi-beast king is quite good. I'm sure you guys will be satisfied." Chu Feng laughed. "Boss, you've eaten one before?" Ouyang Qing asked curiously. "Yes, I roasted one on Mount Tai. At that time, I didn't have any seasoning, but it still tasted quite good," Chu Feng replied. "Oh my God!" the group cried out in alarm. They immediately understood that the headless case on Mount Tai was also his doing. This matter caused quite a stir and had even spread to the outside world. Even the taciturn Chen Luoyan was shocked out of his wits. That was a huge storm. It was said that the Peacock King had gone crazy that day and challenged human expert. Yi Qingru also had a strange expression on her face. She couldn't see through this fellow in front of her no matter what. "Boss, you're really too valiant. You dared to roast a quasi-beast king there. You're so ferocious." Du Huijin and Ouyang Qing were stunned. Lu Tong arrived. When he heard that they were going to eat peacock meat, his expression immediately collapsed. He was so distressed that he wanted to send it all to the laboratory. "Old man, you're too insincere. Last time, you lied to us saying that the Wolf King's meat was poisonous and not edible. That's not the case at all. This time, no matter what, we must have a feast. That's right, where's our royal blood medicine? Hurry up and refine it. We're still waiting to catch up to boss, or else we'll be left in the dust." That night, Chu Feng's home was filled with laughter. They had specially invited a master chef to clean up the peacock meat. Doubtlessly, the guests and the host were all delighted. The meat of a quasi-king level peacock was not something that anyone could eat just because they wanted to. Everyone was celebrating Chu Feng's return. Chu Ziyuan and Wang Jing were both safe and sound. This was a joyous occasion worthy of celebration. The next day, the outside world was still flooded with news regarding Chu Feng's killing of 3 quasi-beast kings. The news was still brewing and causing huge waves. However, something else happened that day. Someone from the peacock race stood out and accused Chu Feng of killing the innocent, demanding an explanation. Moreover, this peacock king made an undisguised threat. He said that Chu Feng was only a quasi-beast king, yet he dared to act in such a manner. He warned that a true king-level expert might kill him. This race had a peacock king who possessed terrifying deterrence. It was obvious that he was trying to intimidate Chu Feng. Kong Xing didn't run back? The peacock race still doesn't know that I'm a king-level expert? Chu Feng was surprised. He immediately contacted old man Lu Tong and said, "Quickly search that mountain range. Who knows, we might even be able to catch Kong Xing. He's most likely on the verge of death and couldn't escape. I've already made arrangements." Lu Tong was like a wily old fox. Naturally, he had already caught onto this suspicious point. On the same day, people from Mount Pan arrived at Shuntian to ask for Chu Feng's forgiveness. Chapter 134. Chu Feng, are you going to give us an explanation? The Peacock Race's people were very high-profile. They questioned him once again. This was not a private negotiation but a public one. For a moment, the atmosphere became somewhat awkward. All the major corporations were watching intently but few spoke. They were waiting to see how things would develop. The Peacock Race and the Mount Pan lineage were both targeting Chu Feng. The consequences were hard to predict. This was especially true for the Peacock Race. Their influence was simply too great. This was an extraordinary period. The competition for the famed mountains had reached a climax and the killings were exceptionally intense. The Peacock Race had long since gained an illustrious reputation. One could easily imagine how powerful the Peacock King was since he dared to fight for the human race's pilgrimage ground. Even several beast kings added together couldn't compare to him. Now, the Peacock Race had come to berate Chu Feng and demand an explanation. Even the major powers who hadn't participated in the killing of the Peacock Race felt apprehensive. They were worried that the Peacock King would vent his anger on everyone. The famed mountains were now stained with blood and experts were contending for hegemony. All the major corporations had their own goals. If the Peacock King were to charge in recklessly and start a massacre on some of the famed mountains, no one would be able to stand it. Currently, the Eight Visions Temple, Roaming Jade Temple and Eight Visions Temple had gathered at the pilgrimage ground. Yet, the Peacock King still dared to fight against them. If it were any other power, they wouldn't be able to stop him. However, the ordinary people didn't care about this. They weren't afraid of the so-called Peacock King. This kind of existence was too far away from them and couldn't possibly target them alone. Hence, they still supported Chu Feng. Many people felt that the peacock race was too tyrannical. It was clear that they were the ones who wanted to kill while Chu Feng was only retaliating passively. They even used the Peacock King's unrivaled reputation to intimidate Chu Feng and demand an explanation. This was too much of a bully. Many people supported Chu Feng on the internet. They felt that he should be fearless. Chu Feng, we support you. Go all out. I don't believe that the peacock race can command the world. Even if the Peacock King is truly unrivaled, the race shouldn't act so domineering. Otherwise, they will bring disaster upon themselves sooner or later. Some people didn't believe that the Peacock King would dare to come to Shuntian and couldn't stand their tyrannical style. All the major corporations remained silent. It wasn't a good time to make their stance clear. If they were to anger the Peacock King, it would be a bloody calamity. The famed mountains they wanted to seize might turn into rivers of blood. Therefore, the current situation was slightly strange. Very soon, many people felt that the atmosphere had become somewhat gloomy. Could it be that the Peacock King was really going to personally come to Shuntian? Where is the envoy from the peacock race? Chu Feng asked the old man in the hollow jade temple. Lu Tong shook his head. He didn't come to Shuntian. He's in another city. According to Chu Feng's character, how could he possibly give the peacock tribe an explanation? He had killed a few peacocks in a row, and if there were more, he would kill them all. That kind of intimidation and threats were useless to him. Over the next 2 days, the atmosphere became increasingly gloomy. Many people could feel the pressure because even though the major powers had expressed their stance, they were still very cautious in their choice of word. They were humans, so they naturally would not side with outsiders. However, they were careful with their words and did not offend the Peacock King. Even the ordinary people were beginning to feel the might of the peacock race. After mentioning that the Peacock King might personally take action, all parties were actually so apprehensive. This kind of deterrence was too terrifying. Only at this point did the ordinary people realize that Chu Feng might have encountered great trouble. If even the major powers were so apprehensive, would he be able to handle it alone? Oh, the noise has finally died down. Those who slandered us don't dare to be arrogant anymore. The Peacock King is indeed like a god, suppressing all parties until they can't breathe. On Mount Pan, an old man spoke. It was Huang Yun, a quasi-king level expert from his race. He had lost a leg and his tail had been chopped off by Chu Feng. Opposite him was a middle-aged man sitting on a praying mat. Although he wasn't a quasi-king level expert, he was close. His name was Kong Zhua, and he was precisely the one who had led the peacock race north to berate and target Chu Feng. The scenery on Mount Pan was magnificent. Below, clouds and mist floated about halfway up the mountain. Above, the vegetation was lush and verdant, and there were all kinds of ancient trees blooming. It was like a paradise. Kong Zhua sat on top of the mountain, looking down at the beautiful scenery. He said, Chu Feng is truly daring. He even dared to kill our quasi-king level expert. This is a blood feud. If not for the Peacock King being too busy on Mount Tai, he wouldn't even be alive. His face was filled with killing intent. Even the powerful peacock race couldn't bear such a loss. In just a few days, they had lost 3 experts in Shuntian. There was a huge commotion within the race. This Chu Feng person must be eliminated. Even if the peacock race doesn't say anything, we won't let him become a true king-level entity. Huang Yun smiled. Yes, my race is of the same opinion. We can't let him be. This person has some methods. They were all quasi-king level experts, yet he was able to fight 1 against 3 and kill all of them. This kind of combat strength is quite terrifying. During these 2 days, the two races had seriously analyzed Chu Feng's strength. This kind of person would be absolutely terrifying if he were to become a king-level expert. The Peacock King was like this back in the day. During his rise to power, he would defeat his own race even when surrounded and attacked. He killed his competitors and occupied the mutant trees in the mountains. Now, Chu Feng also had this kind of potential. He was showing signs of being unrivaled within the same realm. If he were to truly become a king-level entity, how terrifying would that be? To these two races, it was better to eliminate a potential threat like Chu Feng sooner rather than later. Do you think this brat will become a king-level expert? Kong Zhuo whispered. Deep down, he didn't believe it. Becoming a king-level expert was a gradual process. It was difficult for someone who had just become a quasi-king-level expert to immediately become a king-level expert. Huang Yun said, "We also had our suspicions, but after watching the live broadcast, we believed that he was still a quasi-king-level expert. The old ancestor saw it personally and didn't find any problems." Kong Zhuo nodded and said, "But it doesn't matter. In any case, your old ancestor has broken through and has already broken through the second shackle. Even if that human really becomes a king-level expert, he can only die in vain." Huang Yun smiled and nodded. "Oh, the old ancestor has cultivated successfully with the help of the mutant fruits on Mount Pan. He is currently nurturing his sword and is ready to kill him at any time. His imperial sword technique must have become even more terrifying." Kong Zhuo's lips curled into a faint smile. "I do hope he's very strong. Only then would he be worthy of the old ancestor's attention. It would be even more intimidating." The two looked at each other and smiled. Nothing needed to be said because they were about to kill Chu Feng. Now that the foreign races were on the rise, some of the beast kings were extremely terrifying and could be considered peerless. If the foreign races were forced into a corner, they would directly charge into the human cities and start a massacre. This was a fatal threat, which was why some of the foreign races were fearless. From a certain point of view, they were very confident and dared to challenge humans. Huang Yun laughed and said, "It's best to keep a low profile. The old ancestor will attack from the shadows. His sword will cut off the enemy's head from 100 meters away and take it away." Kong Zhuo smiled. "But I still think it's necessary to intimidate them. Haven't we already sent Chu Feng to Mount Pan to beg for forgiveness? He definitely won't come, so we can pressure him. Mentioning this matter repeatedly is also a form of humiliation." During these 2 days, undercurrents were surging in the dark. All the major corporations were somewhat cautious and apprehensive of the Peacock King. The more they understood that this lineage was not to be trifled with. Many people had already understood that the Peacock King, Golden Crow, and the other top experts had formed an alliance. If they were to provoke one of them, they might become enemies with the other powers. The ordinary people were also worried. Was this a sign of an impending storm? Everyone felt that the atmosphere was becoming more and more odd. Something big was about to happen. Some people even felt that Chu Feng should go into hiding. The situation was extremely unfavorable for him. Perhaps a terrifying beast king would really rush over to kill him. "Boss, you should go into hiding. The situation isn't right. There might be a beast king targeting you." Ouyang Qing and the others contacted him and advised him immediately. Even they had such thoughts. It was easy to guess the mood of the others in the outside world. They all felt that a hurricane was about to strike. Yi Qingru also spoke solemnly. "Perhaps the beast race wants to establish their might. After all, you've killed the Ash Wolf, the Peacock King, and the quasi-beast kings of the Mount Pan lineage. You've attracted the attention of some king-level entities." Chu Feng told them not to worry and didn't say anything else. The outside world was in a gloomy mood. More and more people believed that the situation had worsened to a certain degree. Although Chu Feng had killed quasi-beast kings in succession, he had also placed himself in a dangerous situation. The situation wasn't right. Many people felt gloomy. They felt that a torrential downpour was imminent and that lightning was about to strike. As expected, on the third day, someone from the Mount Pan lineage arrived at Shuntion. He no longer shouted from afar but appeared in person to deliver a letter in a high-profile manner, asking him to go to Mount Pan for a chat. "You've killed too many people, but it's not like there's no way to resolve it. Go to Mount Pan and ask for forgiveness. Everything can still be discussed." Although this person's words weren't very serious, everyone knew that if Chu Feng really went, he wouldn't be able to return. On this day, Chu Feng saw this person from the Mount Pan lineage. However, he only glanced at him once before ignoring him. Naturally, he didn't even bother to read the letter. "Young man, you'll suffer greatly if you continue to be so conceited. I advise you to go to Mount Pan and apologize." The middle-aged man glanced at him one last time before turning to leave. Chu Feng opened his mouth. "You almost killed my parents, yet you still want me to go and apologize. Are you trying to humiliate me? Since you're here, why don't you leave something behind before you leave? Do you think I'm so easy to humiliate? The middle-aged man screamed in terror. On this day, Shuntion City was in an uproar. Not only had the person sent by the Mount Pan lineage been chased away by Chu Feng, he had also been forced to reveal his true form. Everyone could see a huge weasel fleeing in panic, leaving behind a trail of blood. This caused a huge commotion, and everyone was stunned. Just when everyone was feeling depressed, Chu Feng was still as fearless as ever and was still so domineering. "Something big is about to happen, the Beast Kings will most likely be mobilized," someone sighed. "What will Chu Feng do? If he doesn't hide, he might be killed." Some people were worried for him. The current situation was extremely bad for Chu Feng. The atmosphere had been gloomy for several days, and many people felt that he should really go into hiding. In reality, Chu Feng had already prepared everything. He was about to set off for Mount Pan and flatten the mountain stronghold. Please vote for the holy ground. The double monthly vote period is about to end. Please vote for the holy ground. Chapter 135. While the outside world was guessing whether or not Chu Feng was going into hiding, he was already on his way. He was about to launch a powerful offensive. Early in the morning, an armed helicopter carrying Chu Feng took off. Their destination was Mount Pan. He sat in the cabin, recuperating and storing up his energy. All the necessary preparations were in place, and there was no need to delay any longer. He was going to flatten the mountain and wipe out the stronghold. The mutants accompanying him were all filled with admiration and were quietly sizing him up. He was going to kill a Beast King alone and take down a famed mountain all by himself. This was like a legend. How much courage did one need to achieve such a feat? When the mutants heard about it, they were almost scared silly. No one spoke along the way for fear of disturbing him. Chu Feng closed his eyes and rested. He was as still as a statue, not moving an inch. The plane roared as it flew over the mountains and forests at an extremely fast speed, heading toward the east. Near noon, Mount Pan was in sight. Mount Pan was adjacent to Shuntion and was located in the territory of Tianjin. Folded spaces had appeared after the great upheaval. Now, flying from Shuntion to Mount Pan required one to traverse a distance of over 1,000 kilometers. Clouds were rising and rosy, green pines and cypresses dotted the landscape. From afar, Mount Pan looked like a fairyland. In the north, this was definitely a famed mountain. The armed helicopter landed. Chu Feng turned around and said, "All of you go back." He was afraid that the helicopter would be caught up in the battle. He was about to fight a Beast King and it was bound to be an intense battle. These people did not delay and quickly took off into the distance. They knew that they could not be a burden to Chu Feng and would not be of much help here. Someone on Mount Pan was crying and complaining to Huang Yun and the others. Quickly, invite the ancestor to come out and kill that Chu Feng. He's too much of a bully, he even chopped off my tail. Sob, sob, it was the weasel who had delivered the letter. He had relied on a ferocious bird as a means of transportation and had rushed back overnight. He had come to the mountain several times, crying and complaining that he wanted to kill Chu Feng. Huang Yun's face was ashen as he gnashed his teeth. He could empathize with the weasel because his tail had been personally chopped off by Chu Feng. Especially since he was a quasi-king. His tail had actually been chopped off. This was a great humiliation. Don't worry, the old ancestor will come out of seclusion today. He has been nurturing his sword for many days and is about to take the head of that arrogant brat. Don't cry. Huang Yun was very annoyed. Kong Zhuo consoled. Ancestor Mount Pan is personally taking action. He doesn't have much time left. You can start the countdown. Boom. At this moment, a huge explosion came from the foot of the mountain, accompanied by a miserable scream. It could be heard even from the top of the mountain. What happened? Huang Yun only had one leg left, but he still stood up with a leap. 2 beams of golden light shot out of his eyes. Not good, someone is attacking Mount Pan and is killing their way up. A weasel panicked and rushed forward to report. Huang Yun was enraged. Who dares to attack our Mount Pan? They must be tired of living. Which tribe is it? How many troops do they have? There is only a single human who unleashed a great massacre, blasting apart the mountain gate with a single arrow. He charged in alone. That weasel reported. This, Kong Zhuo also stood up. A single human dared to charge into Mount Pan? Didn't he know that there was a beast king here? This newcomer had ill intentions. After blowing up the mountain gate with a single arrow, Chu Feng trod on the dust and gravel as he walked along the stone path. Along the way, there were howling weasels that transformed into giant beasts that were several meters long. Chu Feng drew his bow. Pooh! With a single arrow, a mutated weasel was blasted apart, turning into a bloody mist. Who are you? How audacious! Don't you know that this is the cultivation ground of the Mount Pan ancestor? A weasel shouted. He had already transformed into a human and was obviously a direct descendant. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to obtain the transformation fruit. Behind him were over 10 weasels, each of them revealing their snow-white fangs. Their golden fur stood on end, exuding a fiendish aura. These beasts were all 6 to 7 meters long and were more terrifying than any ferocious beast from before the great upheaval. Chu Feng looked at them coldly and did not utter a single word. He quickly nocked an arrow, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard as the iron arrow flew forward. Roar! Bestial roars shook the heavens as the 10 beasts spread out and pounced forward together. All of them roared and bared their snow-white fangs in a terrifying manner. Piu, however, Chu Feng's movements were too fast. In a single breath, he had killed 13 golden beasts. Not a single corpse was left intact as they were all blasted apart by the lightning. The ground was a complete mess, and fresh blood dyed the foot of the mountain red. The remaining weasels were trembling in fear. Was this human or demon? How could he be so terrifying? In the blink of an eye, he had killed 13 experts. They were almost scared out of their wits. Before Chu Feng arrived, he had already obtained Huang Xiaoxian's confession from Lu Tong. There were over 90 weasels on Mount Pan. He had brought a total of 100 iron arrows and a large bundle of them on his back, specially prepared for them. Beast kings that could occupy a mountain were not simple. At the very least, they were able to gather tribes and evolve rapidly. This ability was not something ordinary beasts could compare to. If given time, the tribe would become even more prosperous, and the number of mutated members would continue to increase. The remaining weasels wanted to escape, but Chu Feng continued to shoot arrows without giving chase. Puff, 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 they were all killed. Oh heavens, run! A great demon is coming. In the distance, the weasels who saw this scene went crazy. They ran all the way up the mountain, scared out of their wits. In front of this human, they had no power to retaliate. Chu Feng followed the stone path up the mountain. His divine instinct was extremely sharp. Along the way, he fired a few more arrows and killed a few more beasts. Up until now, he had killed a total of 23 weasels. Each dead beast was several meters long. If ordinary people were to see this in the outside world, it would definitely cause panic. Who's there? On the mountain peak, Huang Yun roared and ordered his tribesmen to retreat, not wanting them to throw an egg against a rock. Chu Feng walked along the mountain path, passing through the misty region and nearing the mountain peak. Halfway up, Mount Pan was shrouded in mist and clouds. The area above the mountain was illuminated by multicolored light. It was like an otherworldly pure land. Ancient trees bloomed one after another, producing fruit. On some of the vines, the flowers were sparkling and glistening like jade. They were covered in rolling dewdrops, extremely beautiful and fragrant. The golden sunlight shone on Chu Feng's body, dyeing him in a faint golden glow. He was like a god of war as he ascended Mount Pan and was about to reach the peak. "What, it's you!" Huang Yun shouted. He could not believe his eyes. It was actually Chu Feng who had come to visit. This young human expert had personally killed his way here. He could not understand why Chu Feng was so daring. Could it be that there were other human kings following him? Although this was the first time Kong Zhuo had seen Chu Feng, he could guess his identity. Who else could be so young and so powerful? "You are truly audacious, actually daring to ascend Mount Pan," Kong Zhuo berated. He then transformed into his true form and flew towards the back of the mountain. Because the ancestor of Mount Pan was nurturing his sword at the back of the mountain. With such a loud shout, it should have long since been alerted. Boom! Chu Feng did not utter a single word. He directly shot out an arrow, accompanied by arcs of lightning and the terrifying sound of thunder. With a pu sound, it pierced through one of Kong Zhuo's wings, causing it to explode. With a bang, Kong Zhuo fell to the ground. Half of his body was covered in blood as he screamed in agony. One of his wings had completely transformed into a mist of blood. With a xiu sound, another iron arrow flew over, piercing through his thigh. With another pu sound, he turned into a mist of blood again. The intense pain was unbearable as he rolled about on the ground. Chu Feng spared his life, but he had also cut off any possibility of him escaping. "Didn't you guys want me to come to Mount Pan to apologize? Now that I'm here, who wants me to apologize?" Chu Feng coldly asked. From start to finish, he was extremely calm as he ascended the mountain and killed the mutated beast. He was like an emotionless devil god, causing all the beasts here to tremble in fear. On the ground, Kong Zhuo was howling in grief. Not far away, Huang Yun's face was pale white. He could not believe that Chu Feng was so daring to kill his way here. "You've become a king-level expert?" Huang Yun trembled as he shouted, "Ancestor, please come out and kill him." Chapter 136. Huang Yun was trembling. He had only ever felt this kind of pressure from the Mount Pan ancestor. Now that this young man was emitting the same aura, he couldn't help but tremble. He wanted to roar out loud. Just what kind of monster had he provoked? He had even chased after this young human with Kong Lin, tearing apart the passenger plane and intercepting him midway. In just a few days, Chu Feng had evolved into a king-level entity. Huang Yun fell back with one foot on the ground. His heart was filled with fear, and he was even more afraid than the others because he was the one who had personally attacked Chu Feng's parents. How could the other beast race members not be afraid after hearing his words? All of them were horrified, their golden fur puffed up as they retreated continuously. "I have no enmity with you people. Not only did you try to kill me, you even tried to kill my parents. Enough. What peacock race? What Mount Pan lineage? You've touched my reverse scale and harmed my parent. Today, I'll pierce through the heavens and wipe out your entire lineage. Chu Feng shouted, expressing his true intentions. He didn't know what his future would be like, but he was certain that after this battle, anyone who wanted to touch his family would have to think twice before doing so. If anyone dared to implicate his parents, he would trample their entire clan and give these savage beasts the most terrifying warning possible. Swoosh. Even though Huang Yun only had one leg left, he was still a quasi-beast king. He stomped on the ground and shot out like an arrow. He was inconceivably fast and wanted to escape to the back of the mountain. However, Chu Feng's speed was even more terrifying. This time, he didn't use the thunderous because he had already slung it over his back. He could sense that a powerful enemy was approaching. It was as if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded between heaven and earth. Chu Feng traversed the vast sky, surpassing the speed of sound. The air behind him exploded, emitting a deafening sound. By the time he landed, he had already crossed 200 meters and landed on Huang Yun's remaining leg. The king-level physique was quite terrifying. Ah! Huang Yun screamed miserably as he was sent tumbling away. Apparently, his leg had been broken. He was a quasi-beast king, but in front of Chu Feng, he didn't even have the slightest ability to retaliate. Not only that, but the blue stones on the ground all exploded. It was as if a great earthquake had happened here, and the entire mountain was shaking. All of this was because Chu Feng had leaped up and stomped down with all his might, shaking the entire mountain peak. One could imagine how terrifying this kind of strength was. Chu Feng didn't kill Huang Yun immediately. He spared his life and threw him beside Kong Zhuo. The other weasels were scared out of their wit. That was a quasi-beast king, second only to the Mount Pan ancestor and on par with Huang Xian. Qi. At this moment, a terrifying scarlet light rushed up. That sword light pierced through the smoke and directly slashed over. That chilly light was frightening, as if it wanted to cut open the void, possessing astonishing destructive power. Chu Feng believed that if this sword fell, it might be able to split the top of the mountain. This was the imperial sword technique. According to ancient legends, it could kill enemies from hundreds of miles away. He was already prepared. A black dagger appeared in his right hand, and he swung it with all his might. A terrifying black light blossomed in the air. Dang! Sparks flew in all directions as if the void was about to collapse. That scarlet flying sword disappeared with a swoosh. After a brief contact, it disappeared without a trace. It could be said that it came and went without a trace. However, this kind of shock wave still caused huge waves of earth and rocks to rise up in this area. The mountains here were all destroyed, and the ancient trees were all destroyed. Finally, the area quieted down. Chu Feng stood on the mountain peak with a cold expression. You've been here for a long time, yet you didn't save your descendant, Huang Yun. You are truly cold-hearted. The next moment, the mountain peak was shrouded in a dense fog. The entire mountain was shrouded in mist, obscuring the sunlight. Even Huang Yun and Kong Zhuo stopped screaming and shut their mouth. They were extremely nervous. The Mount Pan ancestor had already made his move. Would he be able to quickly kill this human? Chu Feng stood at his original position without moving. His ears were listening attentively, and the divine light in his eyes intensified. He wanted to penetrate the dense fog and see everything clearly. At the same time, he activated his divine instinct. There seemed to be a flickering flame on his forehead, overflowing with spiritual energy. He was on high alert as he scanned the surroundings. This weasel ancestor's cultivation was indeed profound. He was hidden in the darkness, faintly discernible. There were actually a few places where his aura could be sensed, as if he was setting up a bewildering formation. In a battle between king-level entities, it was as if their divine instincts were clashing. It was difficult for those in the open to lock onto the hidden ones. Chi. All of a sudden, a scarlet light erupted from behind Chu Feng. It almost instantly closed in on him and slashed towards his neck, intending to decapitate him. This was a scarlet flying sword, sparkling and resplendent. It was the size of a palm and seemed indestructible, far surpassing the speed of sound. If he were to counterattack after hearing the sound, his head would have long since fallen to the ground. Dang! At the same time that Chu Feng turned around, his black dagger had already slashed out. It once again struck the scarlet flying sword, and an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out. In the distance, a few weasels let out miserable cries. This kind of friction and collision was accompanied by a mysterious energy that seeped out from a king-level entity after severing their shackles. Layer upon layer of ripples spread out in the air. The several-meter-long weasels rolled down the mountain peak, howling miserably. Swoosh! The scarlet light once again faded into the mist. Chu Feng held the black dagger in his hand and observed it closely. There were no nicks on it, and the blade itself was undamaged. However, he was astonished that the opponent's scarlet sword was excessively hard and seemingly undamaged. It was actually able to block the black dagger. This had never happened before. Chu Feng had experimented many times, but apart from the stone box on his body, there seemed to be no other material that could block the black dagger. Interesting, could it be an ancient flying sword corresponding to the imperial sword art of Mount Pan? Chu Feng revealed an odd expression instead of fear. He knew that some famous mountains and great rivers had inheritances and ancient weapons. He seriously suspected that the scarlet flying sword had appeared after the opening of Mount Pan's underground palace. Little brother is indeed amazing, becoming a king-level entity at such a young age. At this time, an old man walked out of the mist not far away. He was clad in a yellow Taoist robe. His face was rosy, and his snow-white hair danced in the wind. His pupils were a faint golden color, and his temperament was otherworldly. Was this the Mount Pan ancestor? He continued to sigh, to think that I only became a quasi-beast king 21 years ago during that small-scale mutation. It's been so long since I've stepped into the king-level realm. It's really tough. There had been many mysterious changes during the post-civilization era. The most recent one was 21 years ago, and now the heaven and earth had undergone a complete transformation. The Mount Pan ancestor shook his head and sighed. His interest waned as he walked towards Chu Feng. He passed through the mist without even summoning his flying sword. Boom! In that instant, Chu Feng's body moved horizontally, breaking through the sound barrier. Under the inertia, he rushed out tens of meters before coming to a stop. In that place, a scarlet light hacked down. With a puff, a huge black fissure appeared on the mountain peak, as if it was about to split the mountain in half. One could only imagine the power of this flying sword. It was too shocking. As expected of a weasel, innately cunning and cruel, Chu Feng said. The old man had white hair and a youthful complexion. His temperament was outstanding, but his heart was cold. His so-called body was only an illusion, and not the real body. He wanted to numb Chu Feng, while his real body attacked from behind. Young man, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I asked you to come to Mount Pan to beg for forgiveness, yet you dared to start a massacre. Today, I will slay you under my flying sword, the Mount Pan ancestor said coldly. His voice was erratic, interfering with Chu Feng's judgment. Kill. This time, Chu Feng sensed the aura of the old man's real body. He sprinted on the ground and directly leapt into the air, crossing hundreds of meters in an attempt to kill the old man. An old man appeared, activating his scarlet flying sword. He slashed at Chu Feng, his aura astonishing. The resplendent sword light illuminated the entire peak of Mount Pan. At close range, Chu Feng immediately unleashed a dragon and tiger struggle for hegemony, using the ultimate move of the Xingyi fist to attack the ancestor. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Chu Feng wielded the black dagger in his right hand, using it in the shape of a dragon. His left hand formed the shape of a tiger, intertwining with each other, emitting an explosive sound. The air exploded, emitting a thunderous sound, following which the roars of a dragon could be heard. A dragon and a tiger materialized in front of Chu Feng at the same time. Following which, he charged forward. His momentum was terrifying. This was the power of ancient martial arts. When the human body unlocked its shackles, it could release even more terrifying power. The dragon and tiger contending for hegemony had actually materialized. Pring pring ping, the old weasel controlled his flying sword while striking out with his palms, defending against this ultimate move. Pooh! The scarlet flying sword slashed past, almost cleaving Chu Feng's neck. He dodged to the side, but his shoulder was touched, causing blood to spurt out. The imperial sword technique, controlling a flying sword, was said to be able to kill an enemy from 100 miles away. It was indeed terrifying. Chu Feng suffered a blow, his shoulder burning with pain as fresh blood flowed out. However, his left hand's tiger form also smashed into the Mount Pan ancestor's body, causing him to stagger as a trickle of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The exchange of moves between experts wasn't that complicated. It was simple and crude, and almost all of them wanted to injure their opponent. A battle between king-level entities was extremely terrifying. If a quasi-beast king were to participate, he would probably be turned into a mist of blood in an instant. Chu Feng didn't dare to be careless. He originally wanted to observe and personally experience the techniques of a beast king, but now it seemed that the slightest mistake would put him in danger. His mouth and nose were filled with white mist as he breathed out like a dragon. Then, his breathing rhythm changed as he circulated his special breathing technique. The Mount Pan ancestor wanted to increase the distance between them and use his flying sword to kill Chu Feng. However, Chu Feng increased his speed. After activating his special breathing technique, his strength and speed had increased by a notch. Clang clang clang, the two swords clashed. Chu Feng was ruthlessly struck by the scarlet flying sword several times, sending him flying. The scarlet flying sword continued to slash and destroy the cliff. Boom! Chu Feng closed in on the Mount Pan ancestor, forming a fist seal. Stretching his body, he violently attacked, defending against the flying sword while suppressing the Mount Pan ancestor. Pung pung pung! This was an extremely intense battle. Fists collided, swords collided, and mysterious energy exploded. The entire area was filled with the sound of thunder. Roar! At the crucial moment, Chu Feng let out a barbaric ox roar, abruptly erupting, intimidating his opponent's mind. While the Mount Pan ancestor was distracted, Chu Feng's ferocious and tyrannical attack was launched. If not for the flying sword blocking the attack, the black dagger in his hand would have most likely pierced into his opponent's body. Chapter 137. After the Panshan ancestor landed on the ground, his body was like a stalk of grass, firmly sticking to the ground. The wind from the fists and the mysterious energy were unable to break him. After coughing out a mouthful of blood, he crouched on the ground in his human form. His speed was extremely fast. With 4 limbs on the ground, he instantly appeared several hundred meters away. Chu Feng followed closely behind, his fist imprints and black dagger pointing at the Panshan ancestor. His attacks never left the Panshan ancestor's vitals, intending to take the next step. With one fleeing and one chasing, their destructive power was astonishing. Both of them moved at supersonic speeds, causing the air to explode. Along the way, all the rocks, trees, and everything else that came into contact with their bodies exploded into smithereens. Nothing could stop them. At this level of speed, it was extremely terrifying. The requirements for one's physique were extremely high, or else their bodies would crack apart. There was no way they could withstand it. Boom! A 10-meter-tall brown boulder was smashed into pieces by the Panchon ancestor. Rubble flew into the sky as he flew like a missile, destroying everything in its path. His destructive power was terrifying. He crouched on the ground, sticking close to the ground in an attempt to escape from Chu Feng's close-range attack. However, Chu Feng was like a shadow that had locked onto him. In the end, he leaped forward, the black dagger in his hand stabbing towards the Panchon ancestor's back. The scarlet flying dagger circling around the old weasel exploded with a resplendent glow. It was as if the entire mountain peak had been dyed red. It was simply too resplendent. Dang! The scarlet dagger slammed into the black dagger in Chu Feng's hand, causing the entire area to explode. It was as if a bolt of lightning had descended from the 9 heavens, shaking the entire mountain peak. The power of this flying dagger was too great. It was enough to flatten an entire mountain peak. If Chu Feng was not a king-level entity, how could he have withstood this kind of earth-shattering power? Even if hundreds of ordinary beasts attacked together, they would not be able to withstand a single strike from this flying dagger. The web between Chu Feng's thumb and forefinger heated up as blood began to seep out. However, he was not angry. Instead, his eyes shone with a brilliant light, filled with incomparable hope. He was looking forward to the imperial sword technique. If he could kill the Panchon ancestor, he might be able to obtain his inheritance. At that time, he would be able to control the sword body and sweep away all enemies. This thing was practically indestructible and could even kill enemies from hundreds of meters away. It was simply too terrifying. Rumble! Although the black dagger was blocked, Chu Feng's fist had already landed on the back of the patriarch. The roar of a tiger shook the heavens as a ferocious tiger pounced downwards. This was the tiger form of Xing-Yi martial arts. Even an old fist master who had practiced martial arts for a lifetime might not be able to manifest its true form. However, Chu Feng had mastered it. He had comprehended it thoroughly. This fist was ferocious and tyrannical. When the white tiger's true form appeared, it was in charge of killing, shaking the sun and moon. It was extremely berserk. Old ancestor Panchon was forced into a corner. He flipped his body over, his back sticking to the ground as he flew backward. Both his hands continuously slapped upwards, dispelling the white tiger true form. Bang bang bang, the two of them fought fiercely. One was above, constantly throwing punches, while the other was below, flying backwards while sticking close to the ground. The fierce collision caused the wind from their fists to howl, even more deafening than the sound of thunder. This mountainous region was in ruins after being trampled by the two of them. Many cracks appeared on the ground, and all of the ancient trees had been blasted apart. They seemed extremely weak in front of a king-level entity. Puff! The old weasel coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. Under such a ferocious attack, he was somewhat unable to withstand it. He flipped his body over and stood upright, roaring repeatedly in a frenzy. Chu Feng's fists were too heavy. Every time he struck out, a terrifying sonic boom could be heard. Although there was no lightning, it was even more shocking than the sound of thunder. After breaking through the sound barrier, it was as if the air itself was exploding. The old weasel was in great danger. He was caught in the middle of Chu Feng's terrifying fist. Although he was ferocious, he was unable to withstand the torrential attacks. Dong dong dong, in the midst of this physical battle, the old ancestor Panshan's mouth and nose were bleeding. He could not hold on any longer and was sent flying like a scarecrow. Blood splattered everywhere as his body trembled uncontrollably. His entire body was trembling as he tried to dispel Chu Feng's terrifying fist. Even so, he could not withstand it any longer. Cracks appeared on the surface of his body, and he was on the verge of exploding. Kill! Chu Feng shouted. His fists were boundlessly tyrannical. He was like a demonic god as he pushed forward, suppressing his opponent. Pung pung pung. The old ancestor Pan Shan was once again sent flying, crashing into a distant mountain wall. Huge rocks rolled down in all directions, and smoke and dust filled the air. The physique of a king-level entity was extremely terrifying. Even though he was heavily injured and was in a life-or-death situation, the old weasel was still as terrifying as ever. He rushed forward at supersonic speed, shattering all the rocks on his body. Die! Chu Feng shouted loudly as he struck out with a punch that shook the heavens and the earth. It was accompanied by a thunderous explosion from the 9 heavens. The air was shaken and dispersed. Its might was unparalleled. Boom! The old ancestor's body shone as blood seeped out from the cracks on his body. The blood turned into a scarlet mist that enveloped his body as his king-level strength surged. The old weasel's strength skyrocketed. Otherwise, he would have been killed by Chu Feng's fist. This young human king was simply too valiant. Boom! The two collided, emitting a blinding light. That was the sound of a mysterious energy rippling outwards. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere, as if a hurricane had swept through the area. Even boulders the size of millstones were blown into the air. The Mount Pan ancestor staggered, retreating tens of meters. Large cracks appeared on the ground beneath his feet, and even the ground beneath his feet was cracked open. One could only imagine the terrifying strength he had just encountered. During the exchange just now, the two swords clashed unceasingly. The clanging sounds were ear-splitting, as if they were about to split the heavens. Killing intent overflowed, and sword light illuminated the entire mountain peak. Apart from the blood dripping from his shoulder, Chu Feng was unharmed. He had been cut by the scarlet flying sword. The old ancestor's body was riddled with scars, caused by Chu Feng's fists. He was on the verge of exploding, and a bloody mist curled up around him. He was using a secret technique, using the Beast King blood essence to replenish his strength. Otherwise, he would not be able to block Chu Feng. "I've underestimated you," the old ancestor muttered, his eyes cold. "You asked me to come to Mount Pan to beg for forgiveness, and here I am. But can you bear the consequences?" Chu Feng pressed forward, his aura growing stronger and stronger. His figure was tall and slender, yet strong and sturdy. His physique was sparkling and perfect. This was the terrifying physique of a king-level entity. Although it looked ethereal, it contained a terrifying amount of power. Boom! The battle erupted once again. Chu Feng's fists were even more terrifying, completely suppressing the old ancestor. He was sent flying, blood spurting from his nose and mouth. At the same time, the two swords clashed. The sword light illuminated the entire mountain peak, soaring high into the sky. From afar, it was a terrifying sight. It was as if two peerless sword immortals were fighting for supremacy. Roar! The old ancestor roared towards the sky. His body glowed, and his blood boiled even more intensely. However, he was still no match for Chu Feng, and was sent crashing into the mountain wall several times. If not for the scarlet flying sword, he would have long since been beaten to death by Chu Feng. Even so, he was still able to travel at supersonic speeds. He brought with him a strong gust of wind, leaping across the mountain peak as fast as lightning. He left behind one afterimage after another, destroying everything in his path. The old weasel's 7 orifices were bleeding, and it seemed he was on the verge of death. Chu Feng closed in, but at this time, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He was inexplicably alarmed. Even though his divine instincts had clashed with the other king-level entities, he still felt a chill run down his spine. This meant that the situation was too serious. In the blink of an eye, he once again circulated his special breathing technique and tensed up his body. From the premonition to the defense, all of this happened in a split second. It was like a flash of lightning passing by in the blink of an eye. The hair on Chu Feng's body stood on end. He felt a splitting headache, as if something was trying to drill into his brain. His body staggered, and he could no longer stand stably. In the air, a golden weasel appeared. It wasn't very big, only about half a foot long. It was doing its utmost to drill into Chu Feng's head. If it wasn't for Chu Feng's high vigilance and frighteningly keen intuition, he would have definitely fallen for the weasel's sneak attack. Even so, he had suffered a terrifying attack. Die, I've tolerated you for too long, the Mount Pan ancestor roared. His true body pounced over and attacked frantically. King-level essence blood seeped out of his body and burned into a red glow, providing him with mysterious energy. He attacked Chu Feng with all his might, providing an opportunity for the golden weasel that was formed from psychic energy. This was an ability he had obtained after severing his second shackle. It was almost like a divine ability. He had once again produced an independent spiritual body, like an avatar hiding in the shadows, ready to pounce on Chu Feng at any time and take over his body. This was the old weasel's killing move, but it wasn't easy to execute. That was why he had been trying to numb Chu Feng, fighting him to the death, and then suddenly attacking at the critical moment. Chu Feng had actually been prepared. That was because when he used the demon ox roar, it had shaken the old weasel's spirit. He had been suspicious since then. He knew that the spiritual power of this lineage was extraordinary, far surpassing that of other races. The fact that the demon ox roar could be used so easily naturally surprised him. The old weasel had always coveted Chu Feng's king-level physique. Once he obtained it, his independent spiritual body would have a place to reside and would have a true body. At that time, he would obtain Chu Feng's king-level physique. It would be equivalent to having 2 king-level physiques, and his strength would increase explosively. Kill! The Mount Pan ancestor roared. He frantically activated his spiritual power, and the little golden weasel drilled into Chu Feng's head with all its might, wanting nothing more than to occupy it immediately. Scram! Chu Feng roared. Although he had a splitting headache, he was still clear-headed. He circulated his special breathing technique and spat out snow-white rays of light that resembled lightning. Roar! At the same time, he let out a loud roar and used the demon ox fist. This was a type of spiritual attack that could resist the invasion of divine senses. How is this possible? The Mount Pan ancestor cried out in anger. He had endured for so long in order to kill Chu Feng at the critical moment and snatch away the king-level physique. But now, he discovered that it was as if he was facing a body of copper and bones of steel. He could not drill into the body at all. If it were any other beast king, they would have long since occupied the king-level physique. The old weasel had this kind of confidence. His spiritual power was unparalleled and was not something other beasts could contend against. But now, he was in big trouble. As Chu Feng circulated his special breathing technique, not only did the mysterious energy within his flesh and blood become more powerful, but even his spirit seemed to be breathing as well and had risen by a large margin. At this time, Chu Feng was also shocked. This was the first time he felt that his spiritual body could breathe. In a flash, a silvery white flame overflowed from his forehead. It was a blazing spiritual power that seemed capable of incinerating everything in its path. The half-foot-long golden weasel fell from the sky and rolled on the ground, howling in agony. Even though it excelled in spiritual power, it was still no match for Chu Feng and was severely injured by the flames. Chapter 138. The silver flames on Chu Feng's forehead throbbed as though a god had awakened. That area was incomparably glaring and dyed his entire body with a layer of divine radiance. Kill! He roared and rushed over with a single step. A portion of the silver flames on his forehead flew out. That was the purest form of spiritual energy, burning the half-foot-long golden weasel to ashes. The weasel let out a wretched cry and ran towards the Mount Pan ancestor, smashing into his skull. Boom! Chu Feng followed up with a punch, sending the Mount Pan ancestor flying with a splitting headache. His body was full of cracks and blood splattered everywhere. He was on the brink of disintegration. The Mount Pan ancestor suffered a spiritual backlash and was in incomparable pain. The killing move he had obtained after severing his second shackle had actually lost its effect, and he had to bear the bitter consequences. Clang! The worst part was that his spiritual energy had suffered a setback, causing the scarlet flying dagger circling around him to lose control and fall to the ground. It could no longer protect him. Chu Feng put away the black dagger and walked forward in large strides. At this moment, his forehead was glowing and his spiritual energy was brimming. Within his body, there was a terrifying king-level power. The outcome had been decided. Following Chu Feng's punch, the Mount Pan ancestor let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying over 20 meters away. He crashed into a stone wall and his whole body was embedded into the mountain, causing cracks to appear on the wall. "Young man, how about we stop here? I can make it up to you." The Mount Pan ancestor admitted defeat and struggled free from the mountain wall. His body was in intense pain and his mouth was full of bloody foam. "Killing you will be enough to make it up to me," Chu Feng calmly said. He had come here to flatten the mountain and destroy the stronghold. He wanted to establish his might by killing an entire clan and warning those who had vainly tried to harm his parents. "You should know that I am a member of the Peacock King's alliance," the Mount Pan ancestor said. Although he had lowered his stance, there was still a vague threat in his words. Chu Feng pressed forward in large strides, surging with killing intent. "You dare threaten me? Who cares about the alliance? Even if the Peacock King is here, I will kill you all the same." Boom! In the blink of an eye, he took a step forward and soared into the sky. He traversed a distance of 200 meters and arrived in front of them. It was no different from flying. The ancestor of Mount Pan roared as his eyes blossomed with a golden light. He didn't hesitate to burn his king-level blood. The mysterious energy released from his body after severing his shackles boiled as he fought with all his might against Chu Feng. As long as there was a sliver of hope, he would persevere and find an opportunity to escape. Even though Chu Feng had the absolute advantage, he did not relax at all. Instead, he gave it his all. He had already displayed the demon ox fist that he was most proficient in, and a terrifying might was emitted. Bang! 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 This was a direct clash between two king-level entities. Chu Feng's fists were incomparably tyrannical, and the ancestor of Mount Pan was unable to withstand it. Numerous cracks appeared on his body, and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Puff! Chu Feng struck out with his fist. The old weasel's arms were numb from the impact, and he couldn't lift them up. His chest was left wide open and then caved in. With a pew sound, blood splashed out. His chest had been pierced through. Ao, the ancestor of Mount Pan, suffered heavy injuries and was sent flying dozens of meters away. When he landed on the ground, he had transformed into a golden weasel. He had been beaten back into his original form by Chu Feng. Compared to the other beasts, he wasn't very big, only 5 feet long. His entire body was suffused with a golden luster, as if he was cast from gold. His eyes shone like little suns. He had a premonition of impending death, and went all out to fight with Chu Feng. At this moment, his primal instincts had become even more powerful. Abandoning everything else, the old weasel's strength increased explosively. He threw caution to the wind and released a spiritual attack. Ao! He transformed into a beam of golden light and moved with extreme speed to engage in a fierce battle with Chu Feng. Chu Feng was on high alert. A trapped beast was the most dangerous. He circulated his special breathing technique, and even his spiritual body was breathing. The silver flame on his forehead was pulsating intensely. He blocked the pervasive spiritual attack, and his fists glowed with a mysterious energy as he punched forward. Thump, 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 the old weasel couldn't take it anymore. Even though he was going all out, he still couldn't block the godlike young man. That terrifying strength sent him flying. Chu Feng held the absolute advantage. He advanced step by step, crushing the Beast King along the way until he was sent flying like a scarecrow. Meanwhile, his fists were glowing like the sharp horns of the demon Ox King, unstoppable. Pft, pft, pft. During this short period of time, Chu Feng had already punched out 6 or 7 bloody holes on the old weasel's body. All of them were caused by his fists, and some of them went straight through. Ah! The old weasel let out a blood-curdling screech. He had never been so miserable before. He could feel death approaching. "How is this possible?" he roared. He was extremely unwilling. He had abandoned everything and fought with all his might, but he still couldn't block this demonic godlike young man. One had to know that he was a beast king with 2 severed shackles. He could release an even more terrifying and mysterious energy. By right, he should be far superior to this young human king. But now, not only was he not a match, the gap between them was too great. At the Beast King level, every time he severed a shackle, his strength and speed would increase sharply, and he would undergo a super evolution. This was an extremely terrifying aspect. Add to that the divine abilities he had obtained, the Beast King was even more tyrannical than before. The old weasel had severed 2 shackles, which meant that he had undergone one more super evolution than Chu Feng. But even so, he was still no match for Chu Feng. He was clearly at a disadvantage in terms of speed, strength, and constitution. Thump, thump. Chu Feng delivered 2 demon ox fists in quick succession, sending the old weasel flying into the air. 2 bloody holes appeared on his chest and abdomen. The old weasel was in despair. All the abilities he had obtained after severing his second shackle were related to the spirit, but they were ineffective against Chu Feng. "I'm not willing. I'm a beast king. How can I die in the hands of a young human like you?" he roared furiously. But this couldn't change the outcome. Chu Feng let out a loud roar. His right arm glowed, and a silvery light burst forth from his fist. It was like a flame, but also like a bolt of lightning. It transformed into a blinding beam of light and shot out. The old weasel's eyes were filled with terror. After being struck by the fist, he was sent flying and exploded in mid-air. A beast king had fallen just like that. His body was torn into pieces, dyeing the summit of Mount Pan red. At this time, the mist above Mount Pan dissipated. It was created by the old weasel to confuse and disturb people's spirit. The rays of the sun shone down on Chu Feng's body. Even his hair was glowing. His body was tall and his skin was sparkling and translucent. He looked slender and perfect, but his king-level body contained a terrifying amount of power. At this moment, he was like a god of war. In the distance, Huang Yun and Kong Zhuo were deathly pale. They had long since been scared out of their wits. To them, this was simply a demon king. To be able to kill a beast king like the Mount Pan ancestor, how terrifying was this existence. But he was still so young, and a human at that. They couldn't believe and accept this. The scene at the summit had left them horrified. The beast king had shed blood and finally fallen. The battle at Mount Pan had come to an end. No, this can't be real. Huang Yun's voice was trembling. Even the Mount Pan ancestor had been killed. How could they continue to live? Chu Feng walked into the distance and picked up a bag. He then took out a set of clothes and put them on. In the battle just now, both he and the old weasel had surpassed the speed of sound. Not to mention ordinary clothes, even their bodies were suffering from a great deal of tearing force. Soon after, Chu Feng carried the bundle of arrows on his back and aimed the thunderous at the foot of the mountain. Wherever his king-level divine instinct passed, the weasels on Mount Pan had nowhere to hide. Every single one of them was captured by him. Following that, one after another, iron arrows flew out from the summit, carrying arcs of electricity with them as they shook this famed northern mountain. Pooh! At the foot of Mount Pan, the vicious beasts died one after another. Some of the several-meter-long weasels could speak human language, while others let out bestial roars. It was an incomparably terrifying scene. Chu Feng killed one with each arrow. Dozens of iron arrows flew out, and half of the mutated weasels in Mount Pan were killed. They could no longer pose a threat. Some of them had long since escaped. Although they believed that their ancestor would definitely win, they were still cowardly and fled far away. Chu Feng descended the mountain, relying on his king-level divine instinct to search the nearby mountain ridges. He shot arrow after arrow, and when he passed by a few villages, he was filled with rage. During this period of time, the villages near Mount Pan had all been emptied. Many people had run away, and those who were left behind had been massacred, becoming food for the Mount Pan lineage. Kill! Chu Feng chased after them, not wanting to let a single one of them go. In the end, he killed a total of more than 90 mutated weasels, ranging from a few meters long to more than 10 meters long. His stock of 100 iron arrows was almost depleted. When Chu Feng returned to Mount Pan, Kong Zhuo and Huang Yun looked at him as if they were facing a demonic god. They were trembling in fear. In the beginning, the two of them were the first to conspire, clamoring for Chu Feng to come to Mount Pan to apologize and humiliate him. Who would have thought that Chu Feng would actually come? Moreover, he had single-handedly flattened Mount Pan and slaughtered an entire tribe. Even the beast king of this region had been killed by him. It was truly shocking. Chu Feng wielded the black dagger in his hand and slashed out a few times, rendering them permanently powerless but sparing their lives. He contacted Lu Tong and said, "Old man, I've already flattened the entire mountain." Lu Tong was stunned speechless for a long time. Although he had already guessed that this would happen, he still couldn't help but feel amazed when it actually happened. Chu Feng was indeed heaven-defying. A single person had single-handedly conquered a famed mountain, suppressed an entire tribe, and killed an old beast king. What kind of magnificent feat was this? Chu Feng told him that only 2 of the beasts he promised to deliver to the laboratory were left alive. The rest were all killed. Lu Tong was once again stunned. He opened his mouth but no words came out in the end. On Mount Pan, Chu Feng found the scarlet flying dagger amidst a pile of rubble. It was only the size of a palm and its entire body was bright red, glistening and glistening. It was extremely beautiful. It was unknown what kind of material it was made of. At the very least, the black dagger had clashed with it over 1,000 times without leaving a single mark on its surface. It's only the size of a palm. This is a real flying dagger. Chu Feng was certain that this was not forged by the old weasel. This was a mysterious ancient weapon. Not only was it hard and sharp, but it was also extremely exquisite. It was a rare item in the world. What a good item! Chu Feng sighed in admiration. His heart was burning with passion as he walked towards the back of the mountain. He really wanted to obtain that world-shaking imperial sword art because its offensive power was too extraordinary. Chu Feng believed that once he grasped the imperial sword art, his combat power would increase by a large margin. The outside world was not calm at all. From everyone's point of view, Chu Feng was in a difficult situation with the combined pressure of the Peacock race and Mount Pan lineage. How should he choose? What should Chu Feng do? He should lie low for a while. There's nothing shameful about this. I think this is the best course of action. Some people were discussing this matter. Apart from Lu Tong, no one else knew that Chu Feng had single-handedly conquered a famed mountain. Even the major corporations had no idea that such a shocking change had occurred at Mount Pan. There was only 1 day left until the double monthly period. Brothers and sisters who still have votes, please vote for the holy ground. Chapter 139. At the back of the mountain, there were red peach blossoms and green willows. It was simply like a paradise. All kinds of flowers and trees were flourishing, and the buds that were about to bloom were clustered together. Lustrous dewdrops rolled on the flowers and leaves. There were also wisps of white mist that couldn't block out the golden sunlight. They were like dancing beauties that fluttered gracefully here, adding a bit of the otherworldly feeling of an immortal mansion. Pavilions dotted the waterfall and spring, situated beside a small bridge over a flowing stream. Chu Feng stood there, admiring the beautiful scenery that seemed to be reflected in a painting. Every breath he took was filled with fragrance, making him feel carefree and relaxed. This was a good place for self-cultivation. He paused for a moment and passed through the lush greenery of the back mountain, arriving at a paradise full of vitality. Mount Pan was definitely not an ordinary place. Otherwise, the old weasel wouldn't have been able to break through 2 shackles and master the imperial sword technique. Mutant trees. Chu Feng immediately saw a number of extraordinary saplings rooted in the fenced garden. This was the most important area of Mount Pan, a place where mysterious plants that could evolve humans, birds, and beasts grew. Chu Feng was astonished. There were 5 mysterious saplings here, not to mention the mutant herbs. There were no less than 50 of them, all fresh and tender as if carved from jade. Is this the spiritual essence nurtured by a famed mountain? He sighed in admiration. It was already amazing to find one in other places, but to find a whole field of them in a famed mountain range was like a priceless immortal's medicinal field. To ordinary people, this could indeed be considered an immortal's medicinal herb. That was because the fruits produced here could allow one to evolve into a mutant with extraordinary strength in a short period of time. The saplings were all 2 to 3 feet tall and were of different colors. One of them was especially special. It was almost 2 meters tall and its entire body was as red as agate. Even its leaves were as red as fiery jade. It could be considered a big tree. Chu Feng guessed that the old weasel's ability to break through 2 shackles had something to do with this tree. The other plants shouldn't have such great medicinal effects. Unfortunately, there were no fruits on the mutant trees. They had all been picked clean. Chu Feng had no regrets. There was a beast king, 2 quasi-beast kings, and close to 100 mutated beasts on Mount Pan. It would be strange if there were any mutated fruits left. They had long since been consumed. Among the dozens of strange plants, 2 of them were still blooming and emitting a refreshing fragrance. Chu Feng crouched down and circulated his special breathing technique in an attempt to absorb the pollen. However, a moment later, he was disappointed. This level of strange grass had no effect on him. It could be expected that after he became a king-class entity, ordinary plants that could promote human evolution would no longer be of any use to him. Only the nearly 2-meter-tall bright red tree was useful to him, but it was empty now. He could only wait for next year. This was the advantage of a famous mountain. All the plants could grow again in the next year, blossom and bear fruit, and it wasn't limited to just one time. Why did the major corporations attack the famed mountains with all their might, even if they had to bleed and pile up corpses to occupy one of them? It was for this reason that he wanted to establish himself. As long as he could control a famed mountain, he could ensure that his men and horses would evolve continuously. In the end, it would become a never-ending inheritance. Where's the underground palace? Chu Feng searched. He had long since learned from Huang Shaoxian that the inheritance of Mount Pan was located at the back of the mountain. However, he couldn't find any clues even after searching the entire place. There wasn't even a shadow of the so-called underground palace. Suddenly, he raised his head and gazed into the distance. Even further away, there was a mountain range shrouded in clouds and mist. Moreover, there was an indistinct colossus standing there. Chu Feng was fearless. He had even killed a beast king with 2 severed shackles. What else did he have to worry about? He walked forward in large strides. A giant tree? His heart trembled. The majestic shadow in the mist was actually a terrifying tree. It was rooted at the base of the mountain, but it was so tall that it reached into the air. It was at least 800 meters tall, with luxuriant branches and luxuriant foliage. Its leaves were like jade, suffused with a luster. Most importantly, the place where it was rooted had completely split open. One could clearly see that there was an underground palace within. It was old and emitted an aura of vicissitudes. Chu Feng was overjoyed. He had finally found it. However, this ancient tree was simply too huge. It gave off a sense of danger as it took root there. Chu Feng was certain that his senses weren't wrong. There was a will hidden within the body of the tree. He had already learned from the Hollow Jade Temple that the country had used a large number of guided missiles to clear away the plants in outer space, as well as the giant vines that covered the sky. I came here only to enter the underground palace. I have no other intentions. Chu Feng spoke, regardless of whether or not the tree could understand him. Silence reigned. The giant tree didn't seem to have any abnormalities. Chu Feng took a step forward and approached the underground palace. Suddenly, his body tensed up as he raised his head. The entire tree was moving, and some of its branches were shaking violently. Following which, a certain fruit fell from the tree, emitting a dazzling radiance as it smashed towards Chu Feng. A chestnut tree? Chu Feng was astonished. He hadn't noticed before. This 800-meter-tall tree was covered in luxuriant foliage. All the fruits were hidden behind the leaves and only revealed now. What's going on? Chu Feng retreated rapidly. Those fruits weren't the usual chestnuts. There was also a layer of terrifying spikes wrapped around the chestnuts. Many people liked to eat chestnuts, but they had never seen these hedgehog-like spikes. These things were as sharp as needles and could easily pierce through flesh. The fruits falling from the sky were too big. Each one was 9 meters long and golden in color. They were like giant hedgehogs smashing down one after another. Boom! Moreover, they exploded in midair with a deafening noise. The densely packed golden thorns flew over at high speed and pierced through the void towards Chu Feng. Chu Feng retreated at supersonic speed. He was surprised to find that the golden spikes were more than half a meter long, and some were even more than a meter long. They had all reached the speed of sound and broke through the sound barrier. It was extremely terrifying. It was as if a group of golden short spears were flying towards him. Swoosh, swoosh, the sound of the flying short spears was dense. In the end, Chu Feng was still able to successfully retreat. He had evaded the golden, short spears that were raining down from the sky. The power of the golden thorns was simply too terrifying. They easily pierced through several meters tall rocks and left numerous densely packed holes on the ground. The destructive power was huge. If ordinary beasts were here, they would definitely be nailed to the ground in an instant. After the fruits disintegrated and the golden spikes flew over, the real chestnuts also fell down. Each of them was as big as a bed and fell where Chu Feng had been standing just now. Boom! A huge explosion sounded. The ground cracked open. Rocks as big as millstones shot out in all directions. Each of the chestnuts was like a heavy bomb. The destructive power was astonishing. Chu Feng stood in the distance and was dumbfounded. Was this still a chestnut tree? He couldn't believe it. This was too outrageous. A total of 5 fruits fell down. After the skin spikes exploded, they were like golden short spears that filled the sky. The destructive power was astonishing. And the chestnuts inside were like big bombs when they fell down. After a long while, he came back to his senses. What kind of situation was this? After the upheaval, even an old chestnut tree had become so demonic? I don't care what you are. If you dare block my way again, don't blame me for being impolite. I'll chop off all your roots. Chu Feng threatened. No matter what, He had to enter the underground palace and obtain Mount Pan's inheritance. That was because the imperial sword technique could greatly increase his strength. He couldn't miss it. Chu Feng's whole body was glowing, especially his right arm. After breaking the shackle, the silvery white energy released from his body pervaded the air and covered his whole body. Especially when he started to circulate his special breathing technique, the mysterious energy within his king-level body became even more majestic and rapidly increased. Chu Feng pressed forward and shouted a warning to the ancient tree. However, just as he approached the shade, the giant tree made its move once again. Its branches and leaves swayed as more than 10 fruits fell from the sky. Within a split second, the entire place was filled with golden spears. The scene was too terrifying. Even a quasi-beast king wouldn't be able to block it and would most likely be killed. That was because the golden spikes were too hard and indestructible. Moreover, they surpassed the speed of sound, giving people a sense of fear. Chu Feng was furious. After killing the Beast King, there was actually a giant tree that wanted to make an enemy out of him. He didn't hold anything back and used the Demon Ox Fist. He also activated the divine abilities he had obtained after breaking the shackle. Moo! Accompanied by the indistinct roar of the primordial yak, a gigantic beam of silver light flew out and shattered all the spears that were harder than steel. Chu Feng moved. He traversed the sky and was no different from flying. Every time he moved, he would cover a distance of 200 to 300 meters. Then, with a slight stomp, he would fly again. He used his powerful king-level divine instinct to evade the sky full of short spears and those giant bombs. He shouted, "Even the Beast King here has been killed by me. Since you insist on making an enemy out of me, you can also die." "What? That weasel is dead?" The chestnut tree sent out a hazy consciousness, seemingly shocked. Following which, the ground rumbled as some roots uprooted from the ground. It slid along the mountainous terrain and charged into the depths of the mountain range. Chu Feng was astonished. He had already rushed to the underground palace, but the chestnut tree had escaped. It had actually uprooted itself and slid along the mountain range in order to escape. Chu Feng ignored it and immediately rushed into the underground palace. The imperial sword technique was too important and he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. He wanted to get to the bottom of things first. Very soon, he frowned. The underground palace wasn't very big and was simple and unadorned. There were stone beds, stone chairs, and even stone praying mat. However, there were no diagrams carved on them, so he couldn't find the imperial sword technique. Swoosh! The next moment, Chu Feng rushed out of the underground palace and chased after the chestnut tree. He traversed the sky at supersonic speed, stepping on the mountain peaks and boulders, passing over all kinds of trees. "Human, are you going to kill us all? I'll fight it out with you." Sliding on the 800-meter-tall chestnut tree created a huge commotion. No matter what, it had to leave an obvious trail behind. There was no way to shake off its pursuers. It roared. This time, the fruit that fell wasn't so simple. There was only one, and it was actually almost transparent. It reached the speed of sound as it fell. When it exploded, the scene was too terrifying. Chu Feng didn't understand the situation and thus didn't take the attack head-on. This time, he suddenly changed directions and rushed toward another region at his maximum speed. Boom! The scene behind him was terrifying. After that transparent chestnut exploded, tens of thousands of sparkling short spears flew out and pierced through a short mountain like a beehive. This made Chu Feng draw in a breath of cold air. He reckoned that even a beast king like the old weasel would be pierced through if it tried to take the attack head-on. It was too astonishing. At the same time, the few chestnuts wrapped in the transparent thorns also fell at supersonic speed. After they touched the ground, they exploded with a loud rumble. Chu Feng felt his hair stand on end. The two short mountains nearby had disappeared. They had been blasted apart and completely disappeared. However, how could he be frightened by a mere chestnut tree? He shouted, "Even so, you're still not my match. I can kill you with a bit of effort. I didn't provoke you. Come at me if you want to fight." The chestnut tree spoke. It was very lacking in confidence because there weren't many of those transparent fruit. The most important thing was that if it couldn't hit that human, it would be useless no matter how powerful it was. "What about the inheritance in the underground palace? Did you take it away?" Chu Feng asked. The chestnut tree cried out, "The inheritance is in your body." "Nonsense. If it was in my body, would you still need to look for that underground palace?" Chu Feng stared at it. "I once saw that weasel holding a flying sword to his forehead to comprehend it. There was a spiritual imprint inside. I think the so-called inheritance is in the sword," the chestnut tree informed. Chu Feng took out the flying sword and sensed it with his spiritual energy. He was immediately startled and hurriedly retreated because he had sensed an abnormal spiritual energy. It was somewhat dangerous. He believed it and looked at the chestnut tree. "Since it's like this, there's no need for you to run. Go back and help me guard Mount Pan." "I'm not going." The chestnut tree was extremely afraid of him. After saying this, it immediately fled and glided through the mountain range. "I won't make things difficult for you." Chu Feng chased after it. "I'll consider it after you leave." "Don't chase after me or I'll fight it out with you." The chestnut tree was flustered. In the end, Chu Feng turned around and didn't force it. He felt that it was truly miraculous that even a chestnut tree could be like this. It could actually shoot short spears and bombs. Chu Feng returned to the back of the mountain and buried the seed and the stone box in the medicine field. There were 2 different colors of strange soil nearby that were sparkling and translucent. He wanted to see if he could make the seed germinate again. After that, he sat cross-legged on the ground and carefully examined the palm-sized scarlet flying sword. Finally, he placed it to his forehead and used his spiritual energy to sense it. Boom! Chu Feng immediately let out a muffled groan. His body swayed and his vision darkened. He almost fainted from the impact of a spiritual imprint. This shocked him. This imprint was too strong. It was as if an immortal sword had slashed down, wanting to shatter one's will and obliterate one's spiritual energy. He was sure that even if he had reached the king level, if his spiritual energy was insufficient, he would still die from this impact. Chapter 140. There were 4 carvings within the scarlet flying sword. There were no words to describe them because there was no need. This was a spiritual imprint inheritance. As long as one used their spiritual power to enter, they would be able to experience the profound and mysterious imperial sword technique. However, Chu Feng sensed danger from this scarlet flying sword. The imprint could tear apart one's spirit and kill one's will. He had already withstood the initial attack. Any other king-level entity would have already died. After their spirit was destroyed, they would only be walking corpses even if they still had a king-level body. Chu Feng had to admire the old weasel. His race was born with powerful spiritual power, far surpassing the average beast king. That was why he had obtained the imperial sword technique. However, Chu Feng was even stronger. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to defeat the old weasel's primordial spirit invasion and kill it. There seemed to be a vast space within the scarlet sword. The 4 carvings glowed brilliantly, attracting one's attention. With a swoosh, Chu Feng rushed into the first carving. In that instant, he felt as if an immortal sword had pierced through his heart. He felt as if his spirit was about to be cut apart. The pain was unbearable. He endured the pain and resisted the impact. In the outside world, the silver spiritual flame on his forehead pulsed. King-level essence energy surged and rushed into the scarlet flying sword to support it. Boom! Inside the first carving, Chu Feng stabilized himself. In an instant, the words and carvings rushed over and imprinted themselves in his spirit. This was the inheritance of the imperial sword technique. There was no book, just a spiritual imprint. It was accurate. Of course, it was extremely difficult to obtain this kind of inheritance. The threshold was too high. Only a small portion of king-level entities with terrifying spiritual power were qualified to receive the imprint. Otherwise, trying to forcefully obtain it would only result in death. Their spirit would be erased. Chu Feng silently experienced and comprehended it in detail, thoroughly memorizing it. He retreated and appeared in the vast space within the scarlet flying sword in his spiritual form. After a while, he entered the second carving. With his first experience, it was much easier this time after confirming that there was no danger. Chu Feng gave it his all. His silver flame-like spiritual power rushed in. In the outside world, Chu Feng sat with his legs crossed, motionless. Apart from leaving a little bit of his spirit in his body to be on guard, the rest of his spirit entered the red flying sword to comprehend the sword manipulation technique seriously. In the end, he conquered all 4 inscribed diagrams and obtained all the inheritance of the imperial sword technique without missing a single one. The old weasel only obtained 2 engraved diagrams. It seems like the power of this inheritance is even greater than I imagined, Chu Feng said to himself. He sensed the aura left by the old weasel in the first 2 of the 4 carvings, but there was no trace of its spiritual power in the other 2 carvings. After Chu Feng burned the remaining spiritual power of the old weasel, he retreated and sat cross-legged on the mountain to experience it silently. The 4 spiritual imprint diagrams completely recorded all the methods of the imperial sword technique. He closed his eyes and pondered carefully. The so-called imperial sword technique was not as mysterious as he had imagined. It was just the use of spiritual energy. Through his physical body, he could display simple or profound martial arts. Similarly, his spirit could also display power, either directly attacking or controlling objects to kill his enemies. According to the records of the imperial sword technique, once it reached that level in the legends, it could kill enemies from extremely far away. In short, if there was a physical fist technique, then there would naturally be this kind of spiritual martial arts. I see. Chu Feng nodded. What he was most afraid of was to deify the imperial sword technique and connect it with the legends. If he practiced it like that, it would be equivalent to setting up many obstacles for himself. Physical body and spirit, which is strong and which is weak, can't be differentiated. They are all extremely important. After understanding the nature of the imperial sword technique, Chu Feng began to practice the spiritual martial arts. He got twice the result with half the effort. From clumsy to proficient, and then to the elementary level of controlling objects, it could be said that his progress was smooth and his achievements were extraordinary. The sunset dyed the sky red, and the whole mountain was dyed red. Bathing in the last rays of the sunset, Chu Feng opened his eyes. At the same time, the scarlet flying sword in front of him flew out with a clang and shot into a rock not far away, as if it was cutting through tofu. Chu Feng was delighted. Sure enough, he had some result. Xiao. The next moment, the scarlet flying sword cut through the rock and circled in the air, chopping down at a 5-meter-tall rock not far away. Chi. The several-meter-tall brown rock was cut in half, its surface smooth and clean. With a swoosh, the scarlet flying sword flew back and landed in Chu Feng's palm. It was as translucent as a red coral, glistening and glistening, without a trace of damage. In the distance, the roar of an armed helicopter could be heard. Several of them landed at the foot of Mount Pan, and many mutants jumped down to climb the mountain. They were shocked. Along the way, they saw one vicious beast after another, all killed with a single arrow. Some exploded, while others had their corpses intact. It was a horrifying sight. When they reached the top of Mount Pan, their hearts trembled at the sight of the messy mountainous terrain. The peak of the mountain was in tatters, almost on the verge of collapse. The flying sword had cut through the cliff, leaving behind clear sword marks. The fist imprints had smashed the 10-meter-tall rocks everywhere, and there were also blood stains. This made them deeply feel how terrifying this battle was. "Quick, this is a beast king. Collect its blood, don't let it go to waste." Someone from a first-rate laboratory followed them and started to store the beast king corpses. Some of the old experts felt their hearts ache. If the corpses were more complete, their value would be even higher. "There are 2 living ones here." Someone discovered Huang Yun and Kong Zhua, causing the people from the laboratory to be overjoyed. The 2 mutated beasts felt their hair stand on end. These people's eyes were glowing with green light when they saw them. It was too terrifying, causing their hair to stand on end. When Chu Feng appeared, everyone stopped what they were doing. They were incomparably respectful towards him, and many of them revealed expressions of fanaticism, wanting to go over and say a few words to him. "Arrange a plane for me tomorrow morning." Chu Feng didn't say much. He was prepared to return to Shuntian the next morning. Mount Pan had already been conquered, so he could leave it to Lu Tong to handle. This place held no meaning to him. Everything was worth it after he obtained the imperial sword art. He was still waiting here because he had buried the seed and the stone box. Chu Feng ate some dry rations and returned to the back of the mountain. He guarded the place where he buried the seed and continued to comprehend the imperial sword art, striving to master it in the shortest time possible. The sky was still dark when Chu Feng opened his eyes and dug out the stone box. He sighed lightly. As expected, there were no changes to the seed. Early in the morning, he boarded a plane and left Mount Pan. The news had not been leaked because there was still a need to deal with the aftermath. The morning sun shone through the window onto Chu Feng's body, bathing him in a golden radiance, making him look like a god. At least, that was what the mutants in the cabin thought. A single person conquering a famed mountain, this kind of accomplishment was too terrifying. It was destined to shake the world. Furthermore, they had seen the corpse of the Beast King. It had been smashed to smithereens. One had to know that a Beast King could easily massacre an entire city. Its king-level strength was unimaginably terrifying, but in the end it was still killed by this quiet young man. In the end, they couldn't bear it any longer. Some of them mustered up their courage and stepped forward to take a photo with Chu Feng. "No problem." Chu Feng smiled and happily agreed to their request. After the battle, he was very relaxed, especially after obtaining the imperial sword art. He was confident that he would be able to completely master it in a short period of time, and his strength would increase explosively. It was close to noon when Chu Feng returned to Shuntian City. Returning from the mountain forest, Chu Feng had a strange feeling. On one side, it was a desolate mountain, inhabited by beasts and beasts. On the other side, it was a modern city. The contrast was too strong. "Boss, where are you? We'll go and pick you up." The clairvoyant Du Huijin called Chu Feng's communicator. He was extremely agitated, and his loud voice was so loud that it hurt Chu Feng's ears. Even Yi Qingru was not reserved. Her emotions were fluctuating as she shouted, "Chu Feng, you've really given us a huge surprise. Isn't this kind of news a little too exciting?" The news had yet to spread, and the aftermath of the battle at Mount Pan had to be dealt with to prevent any accidents from happening. However, these people had already found out about the inside story from Lu Tong. At first, these people didn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. They all thought that Lu Tong was an old swindler who was trying to deceive them. But after seeing the photos, they were shocked. The Beast King had been torn to pieces by Chu Feng, and the entire mountain peak had almost been flattened by the 2 experts. It was truly a terrifying scene. "Boss, we're going to hold a welcoming dinner for you. Let's go to the 88th floor of the Clearsky Tower for a feast," the clairaudient Ouyang Qing shouted. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Chu Feng stood by the roadside, waiting for those people to come and pick him up. They had already rushed over and were about to arrive. He stood at the side of a commercial street and was immediately recognized. Hey, isn't that Chu Feng? He hasn't left Shuntian yet. Oh my god, this is extremely dangerous. I heard that the beast race is about to gather here. That's right, this isn't good news. He should go and lie low for a while. Within moments, many people came over to greet him. Some of them were somewhat excited, and some even earnestly advised him to endure and hide outside. Fortunately, Yi Qingru and Chen Luoyan arrived just in time. He hurriedly left. Don't worry, I'll be fine, Chu Feng assured everyone before leaving. Very soon, this news was reported to the public, informing everyone that Chu Feng was still in Shuntian and had not escaped. This caused quite a stir. Boss, you're going to set off a nuclear bomb. This news will soon be publicized by that old fox Lu Tong. Not to mention the others, I reckon even the major corporations will be dumbfounded. In the car, Ouyang Qing was laughing mischievously. He was so excited that he couldn't even drive steadily. Drive properly and don't cause trouble, Yi Qingru warned him. Why is it this place again? Chu Feng recalled his last blind date with Jiang Luoshan and Xia Qianyu. In the end, all sorts of disturbances had arisen. It can't be helped. The banquets here are the best. Especially after the appearance of the desolate mountains, some unheard of ferocious birds and beasts were put on the table. This place became even more famous. It's one of the best, Du Huijin praised. Don't worry, I've already informed them. We've chosen a quiet place where we won't be disturbed. Yi Qingru reassured him. This was a private room by the window. One could overlook the city and even the desolate mountains outside the city. One could even see some birds and beasts fighting. This private room was usually very difficult to reserve because the location was too good. Why do I think that person looks like Chu Feng? He actually didn't leave? Even though they were keeping a low profile, they were still easily recognized in this kind of place. Chu Feng's group was discovered, and many people were even taking pictures. Even after the door was closed, people still came to greet them from time to time. The restaurant manager arrived with a strange expression on his face. He whispered to Yi Qingru, "Some strange race youths have appeared, do you guys still want to eat?" He had good intentions because he knew that Chu Feng was in trouble. He had killed the quasi-beast kings of the peacock race and the Mount Pan lineage, and was currently in the eye of the storm. Especially since the beast king of Mount Pan had spoken, asking him to apologize. The situation was not looking good for him. At this juncture, if some strange race youths were to bump into them, who knew what would happen? No need. Yi Qingru shook her head. The restaurant manager was flabbergasted because the people in the room were too calm and did not seem to take it seriously. Naturally, he did not try to persuade them. Chen Luoyan opened his mouth and said, "I've also heard about it. After Chu Feng was targeted by the peacock race and the Mount Pan lineage, the other races also became restless. There were even some who rushed to Shuntian. Could it be these beasts?" In truth, not long after, the private room's door was pushed open. Someone had arrived uninvited. News of Chu Feng's arrival had already been leaked, and many people were discussing it in hushed voices. It was no longer a secret. Obviously, this was not a human. His appearance was rather extraordinary, with a tall stature and a head of light golden hair. Only his eyes were slightly slender. After entering, this young man put on a fake smile. He saw Chu Feng and said, "Chu Feng? How leisurely. We thought you had already left Shuntian. Who would have thought that we would be able to meet the illustrious quasi-King Chu?" His smile was fake, and his expression was somewhat complicated. There was a tinge of fear, but also a tinge of arrogance. His attitude made it easy to guess that he was very confident. Otherwise, he would not have dared to provoke a death god like Chu Feng. "Since Quasi-King Chu is here, how about we have a chat?" He extended his hand and gestured for Chu Feng to enter. Chu Feng looked at him calmly and did not say a word. This young man with light golden hair did not know why, but he felt a burst of nervousness in his heart. He felt his hair stand on end, but very quickly, he began to hate himself. The other party had not even said a word. How could he be scared? He squinted his slender eyes and raised his voice. Since Quasi-King Chu is still in Shuntian and has not escaped, then please go over and have a chat. Scram. Chu Feng only had this one word. He had even killed a beast king, so why would he care about these young beast race experts? You. This young man with slender eyes and a head of light golden hair was extremely angry. No matter what, he was still a direct descendant of the royal family. How could he be looked down upon like this? One more word and I'll behead you. Chu Feng looked at him coldly. The double period of the monthly votes will end in about 2 hours. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes, please vote now. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.